I call to order the meeting of the Common Council for Tuesday, June 7, 2022. Clerk?
Yes, thank you, Your Honor. We have 12 present in the meeting and 12 present and voting in Civic Clerk.
All right, thank you. Now please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance and remain standing for an invocation led by Alder Stevens. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Alder Stevens.
All right, thank you, Mayor. Tonight's invocation, I chose to tap the shoulders of one of our outstanding members within our city departments. Chief Litton is a 41-year member of the fire service profession and has served as the fire chief of the Green Bay Metro Fire Department since July of 2013. Green Bay Metro Fire Department also serves the villages of Alloway and Bellevue. David is married to Martha, and they just had their 10-year anniversary yesterday. Combined, they have 4 children and 4 grandchildren. Thank you, Chief Litton, along with your family, for your continued support over the years to the residents of Green Bay. Chief?
Chief, go ahead.
Well, thank you, Alder Stevens. I got to say that in my 41-year career in the fire service, I've never been asked to give a public invocation. So this is a new one for me, but I am honored to do so. I have a short story followed by a very short prayer. A young girl was walking along a beach upon which thousands of starfish had been washed up during a terrible storm. When she came to each starfish, she would pick it up and throw it back into the ocean. People watched her with amusement. She'd been doing this for some time when a man approached her and said, "Little girl, why are you doing this? Look at this beach. You can't save all these starfish. You can't begin to make a difference." The girl seemed crushed, suddenly deflated. But after a few moments, she bent down, picked up another starfish, and hurled it as far as she could into the ocean. Then she looked up at the man and replied, "Well, I made a difference to that one." And that's adapted from The Star Thrower by Lauren Isley. I use that short story in our recruit graduation every single year to remind our recruit firefighters that they can make a difference in people's lives. So please bow your heads. Dear Heavenly Father, we thank you for this day and for all of your blessings upon this great city and country of ours. Lord, we pray for knowledge, wisdom, and understanding as we serve our community. I pray for our elected leaders and those of us in leadership positions that we will always act in the public's best interests. Father, we pray specifically for our police and fire department personnel that you will protect them from harm in carrying out their duties. We pray for our other city departments as well, Lord, that they have a positive impact on our citizens. Lord, as with the little girl and the starfish, I pray that each of us make a positive difference in the lives of those that we serve and that of our friends and family. Lord, we ask these things in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. Very well said. Thank you, Chief. Approval of the minutes. Motion has been made to approve the minutes by Alder Scannell, seconded by Alder Stevens. Any changes? Seeing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. The minutes from May 17, 2022 have been approved. Approval of the agenda. Motion to approve made by Alder Scannell,
Second.
seconded by Alder Eck. Any changes there? Alder Stevens.
I'd like to make an amendment to move committee of the whole to after number K. Yeah, after ordinances, please.
Okay, so there's been an amendment made by Alder Stevens to move the committee of the whole, which is report V, in front of ordinances second reading for adoption. After ordinances, second reading for adoption? Okay. That was made by Alder Stevens, seconded by Alder Johnson. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. The agenda has been amended.
Motion to approve as amended.
Second.
Motion to approve as amended made by Alder Scannell, seconded by Alder Stevens. Any comments there? Seeing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. The ayes have it, and the agenda has been approved as amended. Just a couple comments under the report by the mayor, mostly just event-related. We've got a full weekend coming up, so just wanted to note for everybody, the first Friday on the Fox in 3 years. is happening this Friday. So encouraging everybody to go out and enjoy the city deck and enjoy the tunes offered by downtown Green Bay. And I think the Britons are playing. So encouraging folks to check that out. Then the following day, on Saturday, we've got the 46th annual Bell and Run. I think Alder Stoyer is running that again. So, no? I won't be running either, but I'll be out there cheering. So encouraging everybody to take in the run, cheer on the runners. That too has not been done fully in person in several years. So another great event coming back to the city. So hopefully folks will be out there enjoying the race and the entire event. Finally, St. Willie's Jam is coming up. St. Willibrod's annual church picnic on Sunday. So they've got bilingual mass and then, of course, a bunch of good eats and entertainment for folks to enjoy. So also just wanted to note that for council and the public. So with the full agenda in front of us, I will conclude there and move along to announcements from our council. Any announcements? Alder Johnson?
Thank you, Mayor. Just a couple today. One, the Chamber of Commerce hosted its annual business recognition luncheon, and a face that, of course, I'm not embarrassed to admit that I know him well, and I think he's a real treasure to our community, but Garrett Bader was recognized as the Business Person of the Year, a developer that we've seen before us many times, and I think the city is very fortunate to have him investing the amount of money that he does in our community. Secondly, Mayor and I today attended actually Alder Scannell was there as well, attended a groundbreaking for the Legacy Hotel in the Legends District. So very excited to get that project kicked off and under construction. Another really fine project here in the city of Green Bay that is really going to help serve as a catalyst for redevelopment of that entire area. Third, again, Mayor and I were at the Greater Green Bay Community Foundation, who many know are moving into the old depot where the Chamber of Commerce used to be located, most recently Breakthrough, to commemorate a new piece of art that was installed by an Oneida artist. And so that was really great to see the private sector stepping up and making investments in public art pieces. And lastly, an event June 18th and 19th is the day that it'll be predominantly programmed, but On Broadway is doing its second annual Mural and Busker Festival. 10 new murals will be installed in the Broadway district, along with programming throughout both days with buskers, which are street performers. A lot of folks coming nationally from throughout the country. So these are high-level buskers, not just people strumming a guitar. So although you have some of those too, but it'll be a very entertaining weekend. So come on down. June 18th and 19th. In fact, some of the murals are already being put up if you drive through. Yeah.
Thanks, Alder. Any other announcements from council? Seeing none, we will move along to our presentation. So this is item I, report on Green Bay Violence Problem Analysis 2019 to 2021, and this will be presented by the National Institute of Criminal Justice Reform and the Green Bay Police Department. So I believe we have David Muhammad,
Yes, he is here.
who has joined us via Zoom. David, are you here?
I am.
Very good.
Yes.
Well, thanks so
Thank
much
you.
for joining us. Thanks for all the work that you've been engaged in with our police department. Heard some, I think, rave reviews from you and your team just in terms of the effort that the collaboration you received from the police department. And I think a lot of that praise was reciprocated for the work that you've put together. So just wanted to thank you for that. Thank our police department for these efforts, and then I'll just turn things over to you.
Certainly. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you for everyone and members of the City Council. Yes, the partnership that we received on this from the Green Bay Police Department was significant, and for us to be able to collect this information, collect this data, we're also able to meet with some significant members of the community and community organizations and service providers, and so we were asked by the City of Green Bay to conduct this analysis of gun violence, what we call the gun violence problem analysis. And we examined significant amount of information. It had a series of interviews with detectives, with other police personnel, and we published. I know that folks have had a chance to receive the summary narrative of the analysis, and I will present to you this evening greater detail. So again, just backing up, my name is Dave Muhammad, the Executive Director of the National Institute for Criminal Justice Reform. We have several members of NICJR team on, but in particular, Dr. Lisa Marrero, who is one of the primary authors of this report and who did a bunch of the assessment. For somehow she wasn't with me when it was -9 on our first trek there to Green Bay, but really appreciate the work that the team put in, as well as you said earlier, Ms. Mayor, the work from the police department. So I want to share screen and share with you. Hopefully you'll be able to see this. And once I share screen, if folks can just give me a indication that you are seeing the screen and that you can see it.
Looks good.
Okay, awesome. So this is a long presentation, so I'm going to go quick. And what my suggestion would be that we have question and answer and discussion at the end. But I do want to say, if there's something, if you have like a clarifying question, if something's not making sense that you want to jump in on, please let me know, and we'll get it clarified. And so let me just do another, just double check. Did the screen shift? Some just want to make sure sometimes. Are the slides advancing? Are you seeing the advancing of the slides?
Yep, that looks
Yes.
good. And we're just
All
working on minimizing the Zoom screen, but you're good to go ahead.
Oh, okay. Okay. All right. So I will first just talk about what this is and what we did in this process. So first, a gun violence problem analysis is we've conducted these in several cities. We also have partners, colleagues, and other organizations that we partner with that have also done these and others across the country. Is to really get a deeper understanding and analysis of the dynamics of gun violence in a city, and then to use that analysis to understand the problem more and better, and to really develop tailored interventions, to focus interventions at those groups and individuals who are at the very highest risk of gun violence, and to really set new programming, new protocols and policy to connect to where a better understanding of the gun violence. So in the city of Green Bay, and if you're adjusting screen, you need me to slow down, just let me know. In Green Bay, we looked at 3 full years of every single homicide, every single non-fatal injury shooting, and every single shots fired incident. Because of the good fortune of Green Bay having relatively low levels of gun violence, we were able to do this deeper dive. This is the only city in the country we've ever looked at every single shots fired incident over the period of 3 years. And I think, as you'll see, that gave us a greater depth of understanding of these challenges. So the 8 homicides involved 28 unique individuals, victims or suspects. The 23 non-fatal shootings involved 52 unique individuals, and the 129 shots fired incidents involved 106 unique individuals. And so in addition to the incidents themselves, we looked at these individuals with some depth, and analyzing the characteristics of the incidents and the individuals involved and the groups that they might be associated with, and the social networking, some social network analysis that you'll you'll see. Just a quick piece. When we say homicide here, we're talking about murder, illegal homicide. Non-fatal shooting is when somebody is injured in a shooting, but is not. Shots fired is when shots are fired, right? It's literally when a bullet is discharged, but there's nobody hit. Although in many of those incidents, cars or homes are hit. So there's victims as it relates to the owners of the cars or the residents of the homes. And then group is the gang, crew, clique. We refer generally to the term group because in many places, gang has a legal definition that has legal consequences. And then second, many of these groups aren't the traditional gang that we have in our heads of higher orders and structure. Many of them are very loose knit, but they are identifiable groups. All right, just a few things that we talked about, how we designate victims and shots fired, and the total number of people that we looked into folks' background, and what we asked the police department in terms of things like suspects are people where there is clear evidence that this person is a suspect in this case, whether or not they were convicted, but where there was clarity that it's obvious this person is a suspect in this case. All the shots fired cases are even more difficult to solve. This is traditionally. That being said, we were very impressed by the amount of information that we were able to collect on these incidents. So just some really, basic background. This is your homicide numbers of homicides in Green Bay. Thankfully, relatively low. There was this very scary spike in 2020, like the rest of the country experienced, but unlike the rest of the country, we saw it fall in 2021 in Green Bay. We have done these analyses and presentations in several cities. This is the first one ever where I can say that it's below the national average homicide rate. Every other single city that we've conducted this study in has been above, in some places well above the national average. And so you see here that the Green Bay is below the national average, often below the state average in shootings. And that's or in homicides. It's the next slide. This just says what I just said in narrative. So to get into the heart of some of the matter, this is homicide and shootings. And so if you look at the sex and race, it is like nearly every place in the country, overwhelmingly male. This is very consistent to around the country. And here you have very, very, very disproportionate race data and statistics. And so 54%, if you combine victims and suspects together, 54% are Black, despite the fact that the city of Green Bay is only 4% Black. And then you have, nearly 19% of white and Latino, 4% Asian, and 8% other, but more than half, as well as by far the largest just on its own population. And so you're looking at Black males, and if you also just look at Black males in the population, it would be even less, closer to 2%, despite being a significant number of the people involved in shootings, both as victim and as suspect. And then look at age. This is often one that surprises people. That being said, this is very consistent in cities across the country, that the age is really between 18 and 35 is the most significant, and that juveniles are a much smaller part of this problem than most assume. And so you'll see that people under the age of 18 are just 6.3% of both victims and suspects in shootings and homicides, the large portion being 18 to 35. But you'll see that even over 35 years of age is more than double under 18, right? And so you have as a mean age for victims, nearly 29 years old, 27 for suspects. And so a population a bit older, still young men under 30 years old largely, but a lot older population than we tend to think of. This is just, shows you another visual breakdown of the population by age. And then this was something we went back and did, I think, at the request of maybe some of you all, which was there was this question of residency. And there was, and this is not unique to Green Bay either, this notion of wondering if some of the challenges are outside of the city coming into the city. And basically what we were found is not really. Remember that these are the smaller numbers, the homicides and shootings. When we get to the larger number in shots fired, even a larger portion of that population are Green Bay residents. But if you look at the victims, 60% of victims and 70% of suspects are known to be Green Bay residents, with the disclaimer we have at the bottom that sometimes this is difficult to come by. But again, this was a situation where we're able to really get a lot of information, largely from the Green Bay Police Department, but also want to appreciate probation and parole for really helpful information as well. Then we looked at shots fired. Again, one of the reasons that this is also significant is there were just many more incidents and therefore more people to examine to get a better picture. And depending upon the theory around shots fired versus non-fatal shootings and homicides, some would say it's about, luck or aim, though the significant difference in numbers of incidents does lead us to believe that a lot of this might be deliberate, that there is deliberate shooting of cars and deliberate shooting of empty dwellings to give a message, right? That the shooter in many of these incidents may have had no intention of hitting someone. They may have been trying to send a message. Several of these incidents, for sure, it might have been they were trying to hit someone, but missed. That being said, the point here is we were able to examine many more people. And that being said, it was still consistent, still consistently significantly male, but a lot more female victims. Which again, when you're thinking of victims in terms of the owner of the car or whose name is on the house, then that is more about why you're getting this increase in females, probably not that you have more being targeted. Because when you go to suspect, you have it more along the lines of homicides and injury shootings. Then for race, again, consistently, overwhelmingly, disproportionately Black, even more so for these incidents. Age, again, it just more of what we knew, meaning even significantly higher numbers, 18 to 34, with the exception of it being a little older, right? So less juveniles, less children, less youth being involved, a higher number of the 35 to 44 category. And so again, a little older though, by much. So meaning we're not that far into 35 to 44 because the mean average of victims is 31 and suspects 27. So you still have it similar to shootings and homicides. As I mentioned earlier, when you look at the residents and this being of a larger portion of people, you have overwhelming from the information that we were able to obtain, which is on a lot, on 106 people, given the number of incidents that's large. that the vast majority of the Green Bay residents. So some characteristics to think about. Shooting and homicide victims were primarily male, primarily Black, the overall average age 28, 76 being between that range of 18 and 34. Shots fired, very, very similar demographics. And so now we want to go into the criminal justice background. Although not surprising, yet significant, the vast majority of individuals involved in these incidents were known to the criminal justice system prior to the incident. And so when you look at those who were known to the justice system, about 3 out of every 4 on average were known to the criminal justice system. And of them, you had about a third convicted of a felony prior to the incident. More than half of all of suspects hadn't been incarcerated prior to the incident. A little bit more than a third of suspects had of those known to the criminal justice system had pending cases prior to the incident. And it goes down the line: prior probation, active probation, prior parole, active parole. And so when you're looking at this, I think the takeaway is, and plus when we see some other information around the number of prior arrests, that this is a population that is known to the criminal justice system, but it is also a very small population. And then we looked at number of cases and arrests of the individuals who were known to the justice system. And so suspects had nearly 5 previous arrests in Green Bay, with, on average 1.5 of those being felony arrests. And as all of this information layers on, and I know this is a lot of detail, I'm going to go a little quicker after some of these slides. But when you start to add all of these kind of characteristics, male, Black, criminal justice history, number of previous arrests, and then what we'll get to in a minute is connected to kind of cruise groups. You begin to see a list of risk factors that gives you a very small population of people. This is just another visual display of the criminal justice background. And these are the offenses for which people had previous arrests for. What we have learned about this is the type of arrest is often not that important. It is the number of previous arrests that can become predictive. So on average for victim and suspects, it's 4.5 previous arrests prior to the incident. Adult arrests, we did not receive juvenile arrest records. And again, another visual display of this. And the more information as it relates to, I'm unfortunately losing a piece of the presentation. There we go. Sorry. All right, looking at the shots fired information. So this is the larger population. And again, very, very similar numbers. A lot of previous involvement in the criminal justice system and previous felony conviction, probation, parole, very similar numbers. And it is, looks very likely that we're talking about a similar population, if not the same population of those involved in shootings and homicides as involved in shots fired. And again, similar outcomes, if almost identical in terms of previous arrests, previous cases. So I'll move a little quicker now, since we've got some baseline information. Again, I think on previous arrests, previous incidents, it is the number of previous that is a bit more significant than the type. So approximately 72% of suspects and 76% of victims had prior criminal justice system involvement. About a third had been convicted of a felony previously. And about half the suspects had been previously incarcerated. A third had been on probation before, and only 12% active at the time, and smaller on parole. These are slightly, we've seen this higher in many other jurisdictions, but still significant. And then we had nearly 40% of suspects having an active pending case at the time of the incident. Suspects and victims have been arrested about 4.5 times. Only about 1.4 of those were felony arrests. We can't be sure of all activity all over the place, right? So other states, we may not have been able to receive that information, so it might be higher, and we did not have juvenile information. Shots fired, very, very similar in terms of prior criminal history, prior felony conviction, prior incarceration, probation and parole history, very similar population, and slightly higher number of previous arrests. Looking at the incident, we looked at group involvement. Were they a part of a crew, a group, or gang? For what we were, when we were able to say for sure yes or no, that was higher. And so we'll get to that slide. But 42% was a clear yes, and unknown on nearly 20%. And then I want to spend some time here, what we were able to determine as the reason for the homicide or the shooting. This is one of the few, although personal dispute is high, it's one of the few cities where it's not the highest that we've seen. So drug-related dispute, again, the number of these incidents are low. So these, we have to bear that in mind with the percentage, but drug-related disputes were the highest frequency in terms of the reason why. Personal dispute was next, group-related dispute third, and instant dispute, meaning something happened in the moment that caused a conflict. But what we also looked at is those incidents where a group member was involved. And so take personal dispute, which this example I'm going to give is true everywhere around the country, where we might be fighting about a young woman, right? I might be upset that you're going out with my old girlfriend. We get into some sort of conflict. Sometimes that plays out on social media, and that escalates to a shooting. And the cause or the circumstance was around a personal dispute, but we're both also members of local neighborhood cliques. Although, as we'll see, a large percentage of the individuals involved in shootings are members of local cliques or groups, that doesn't mean that's the reason for the shooting. And as you see here, the reason for the shooting can often be a drug-related dispute, a personal dispute. On the shots fired incidents, because of the nature of those incidents, we were just not able to know more about group involvement. But we were able to determine more often what the incident was about. But still, there's still a large number, 39%, that were unknown, because those are types of incidents that are very hard to solve. A shooting happens, somebody drives off, nobody is hit. And so obviously much more resources are put into homicides and when somebody is shot by an assailant. And also there's a lot more cooperation, for instance, on a homicide than there is on a shots fired incident. That being said, what we were able to determine is on the shots fired incidents, a lot of this is that bad day that Green Bay had, that I think 24-hour period of several shootings back and forth. I forget the total number, but all of those shootings back and forth about a year or more ago and so personal dispute, drug-related dispute, those are still the top reasons for the shootings. And so, again, we conducted all these interviews, and a large portion of shootings were connected to individuals who are a part of groups. A variety of ways in which we were able to do this, interviews with detectives. Also, when people get arrested and are incarcerated, they often are very honest about their affiliation because they don't want to be housed in a part of a facility that houses their rival. And so that's also a lot of information you're able to receive. And again, many of this are data points we talked about. So again, the percentage that were confirmed to be group members and those both as victim and suspect, and then again on the shots fired, the knowable circumstance was largely group related, but that is largely related to that, I think it was 24-hour, 48-hour period where there are a number of shootings back and forth in Green Bay that I'm sure everybody remembers, that thankfully, I don't think anyone was, or the few people hit in it, but there was a very scary few days of numerous shootings. All of that was a retaliatory cycle of a group involved conflict. And so I'll really race now. This just shows you some geography, some heat maps of looking at homicides and shootings over those 3 years, looking at shots fired over those 3 years. The shots fired is a bit more spread. And looking at, just again, density maps in the areas. And so, and these are many of you all will recognize this, but for the public who may not, A, B, C, and D are the police districts, how they're broken down. And so we see that there is a heavy cluster in Area C, which overlaps with some of the group strongholds, as well as what we found is there is a significant connection to bars and clubs, that there's a lot of conflicts that escalate in shootings related to people going out, and sometimes rivals or people who are just in conflict bumping into each other, and sometimes instant conflicts happening in the bar. But a lot of it is people who are in conflict having nothing to do with the bar or club, who just see each other there. And so we looked at, as I mentioned, these group dynamics. We're not going to go deep into this. We have a deeper analysis that we really don't want to share in a public way of the specific groups, other than to say there are, these groups in Green Bay. Some of them are more structured crews that have been around for a while and connected to outside areas. Others of them are kind of connected to family groupings, friend groupings. But we did identify 11 specific groups, crews, gangs in Green Bay. And 7 of those groups were involved in 2 or more shootings or homicides. When we, again, look at the incidents of group involved, and then when we know yes or no, when we are clear of a yes and no, you see that for the suspects, there is more than half. And then shots fired, obviously much larger unknown. So I'm going to move on to just, or to close. And so initial findings and summary, then we'll go into recommendations. That the victims and suspects of homicides look similar, right? They have similar characteristics and risk factors. Young Black men, age 18 to 34, significant criminal justice history, connected to a crew or gang, a group. And it's a very tightly concentrated. So this is a small number of people, right? The vast majority of people, the vast majority of Black men in Green Bay are not involved in gun violence. It's a small population. And a good number of these incidents could be identified ahead of time. The violence is somewhat predictable and therefore preventable. And while many of these people involved in gun violence are connected to crews or groups, often, as I mentioned earlier, the motive isn't necessarily a group conflict or a gang war. There might be petty conflicts, drug conflicts. Social media slights are a significant issue. So recommendations. First, we suggest, and I know there's been some movement on this front, that the police department create a unit that's solely focused on gun violence. And all over the country, a big portion of police time and effort is responding to calls for service, responding to 911 calls and other calls for service, which makes it difficult to focus on the small percentage of calls that are related to gun violence. But what we know is a much higher portion of people's concern, fear, and interest in solving. And so we're suggesting something like a gun violence reduction unit. The title is obviously not that important, but the focus around gun violence. To that point, that there is increased intelligence gathering. I've got to say, I'll just be honest, we did not expect that there was as much intelligence being gathered in Green Bay, being a small city with not that large of a gun violence problem. And so we actually were impressed. That being said, there certainly can be improvements in terms of collecting information and creating a larger culture of information and intelligence gathering. And our primary recommendation is the implementation of a gun violence reduction strategy. A strategy that you would, on a consistent basis, review shootings. For Green Bay, something like every other week or so, you would review all shootings, every homicide, every shooting injury, and every shots fired, and determine which of these shootings have a likelihood of retaliation, which is the vast majority. And through the intelligence that's known, try to understand who might be victimized, who might retaliate, and can we connect those individuals with intensive community-based services? And so recommendation 3 is a real investment in community-based services in Green Bay, and not just a variety of here's employment and here's some housing and here's some mental health or here's a youth development program, but really focused and intensive on and with the individuals at highest risk. And so something we call life coaching is to have people whose full-time job is to engage positively with individuals at high risk, and that they have intensive engagement with them, daily connection, seeing them 3 to 4 times a week in person, developing a life plan with them, being with them consistently over 6, 8, 12 months. And that's what we've seen have been effective at bringing somebody out of their risk levels. And so that concludes. I want to say my colleague, Dr. Lisa Barrero, who helped conduct this analysis. I just want to ask anything else. I know I went longer than what we thought, but anything I missed or that you want to emphasize?
No, I think we're all set, David.
Thank you. So I will stop there, and I don't know if Chief Davis or others, or if you want to just open it up to questions from the council.
Well, thank you, Mr. Mohammed, for all that work and for the presentation. Yes, I would open things to Chief Davis or Commander Warwick. Chief Davis on the Zoom and Commander Warwick here in council chambers. If either of you have anything to add for us.
Yeah, thanks, Mayor, and hello, everyone. Sorry, I'm joining you from COVID quarantine. I would much rather be with you today. I don't have a whole lot to add to that. I mean, I think it's a pretty comprehensive picture of our gun violence issue here. Obviously, there are some things that I found surprising and other things that I didn't. But the whole purpose of this part of our solution to gun violence in the city was to help us all arrive at what the problem actually is that we're facing. I think a lot of times when we encounter these issues in cities, we make some assumptions that are certainly understandable, but that actually if we go based on those assumptions, we might start down a road that doesn't actually solve our problem. And so our next step from here is hopefully to use the insight that we've gained from this work to find the right levers to work to correct the problem that we're dealing with here in the city. So I want to thank David and his team, as always, for their great work and their really unflinching look into all the drivers of our issues here.
Great, thanks, Chief.
A lot of this work is a result of a lot of the great members of the Green Bay Police Department putting in countless hours when these incidents occur.
Absolutely. Well said, Commander Warwick. Thank you for that. And so now I'll turn things over to members of council for any questions for our presenters. Alder Scannell.
Just to the chief, what did you think of the recommendations as far as following through with a group or certainly better communication is a doable goal, but what do you think about the group?
I think, well, I agree with all the recommendations because I think they're things that have been shown to work in other places. Already reestablished, or permanently established, I should say, essentially the gun violence reduction unit. We're calling it the neighborhood response team. And as staffing levels improve, we hope to increase that from 2 officers to 4. But really, I think the Office of Violence Prevention type approach that you see in a lot of other cities, I come from a city that used that approach, and that worked for a very long time to deal with a problem that flared up there in the 90s and early 2000s. And that approach really worked for a long time. And we saw what happened when we got away from that approach. The problem came back. And, obviously there are lots of reasons why that happened, but I'm a big believer in that kind of approach. And I think, giving people who are at risk of getting into this situation either as a perpetrator or as a victim. And sometimes those 2 roles become interchangeable over time. And as you see these group dynamics play out, but giving them some kind of support that's tailored to them that also is combined with accountability. And, we do need to send that message to folks that if, despite all our best efforts at trying to help you do something better with your life, you still insist on picking up a gun and going out and threatening people's safety, there is accountability for that. That approach really, really works because it meets people's needs where they're at. So hopefully that makes sense.
And if I can just say, and I appreciate Chief Davis for that, and I was trying to, at the end, hurry up and be done because I looked at the time and noticed I was going longer than I had hoped, but I failed to lift up this Office of Violence Prevention in the recommendation. So one of the ways that we suggest some of the coordination happen, as well as the administering of community-based services, as has happened, and to Chief Davis' point, in several cities in an effective way, is to have this kind of Office of Violence Prevention, Office of Violence Reduction, Office of Neighborhood Safety. They have a few different names around the country, but there are about 40 of these types of offices around the country in cities. Several are coming online now, so I think we'll quickly be at 100 by the end of this year. And it's an effective way to coordinate this type of strategy.
Alder Scannell.
Thank you. That's it. Thank you.
All right. Then Alder Eck and Alder Johnson after that.
Yes, I noticed that you had the different groups there, and one said Milwaukee, and I just wondered, do you have data on the percentage of people that are not Green Bay residents that have come in and were a part of the criminal activity?
Yeah, so we showed the one slide that's not specific to just Milwaukee, but outside of Green Bay. It's a bit smaller than I think that some folks might have thought, or at least I know when we were asked to look at this specifically, and Lisa, feel free to chime in if I get any of this wrong. So this is for homicides and injury shootings. And so you see that for victims is actually a little less than suspects. But then the larger portion of cases where their shots are being fired, but no one is being hit, you have a much larger percentage even of Green Bay residents, and this is the shots fired one. So of nearly all of the victims, again, the trick there is most of those victims are cars and houses, so obviously why it would be nearly all. But on suspects, though, it's still largely Green Bay residents, and so the out-of-town portion is not none, right? But is a smaller portion.
Alder Eck.
Thank you.
Thank you. Alder Johnson, then Alder Galvin.
Thank you, Mayor. Something that really struck me was listening. I mean, obviously, there's a lot of data to digest there, but a couple of pieces that really floated to the top for me. When we look at homicide, 75% were previously known to police, 44% were incarcerated. When we look at shots fired incidents, 68% previously known to police, 49% shots fired. And as part of that, on average, individuals involved very close to 4.5 times they had been previously arrested. And so I think that, I'm just curious, maybe from the police chief's perspective, what is the police department currently doing to use data like that to proactively identify individuals that are at high risk of being involved in this type of behavior? Because I would think that through state records, we could, individuals, again, almost half previously incarcerated. I mean, that should be a list, I would think, that is available to our police department. I'm just curious, Chief, if you have that data, those names, that information, and maybe is the police department currently using it?
You have to be a little bit careful in how you do that kind of thing, because lots of people have been previously incarcerated who will never be involved in gun violence. And so that can be one common thing that you see among people who get involved in gun violence, especially in public spaces. But it's not as just compiling a list of all the previously incarcerated people and looking at them. And take that, though, along with other things. And so, for example, what we're doing is we know who we encounter at scenes of where shots are fired. And if we start seeing the same person over and over again connected with these events, that's an indicator. We know as we start to just learn more about the social networks that are involved in this activity. A good thing about Green Bay is it's a relatively small city and it's easy to get to know people. And so that's part of the mission of our neighborhood response team, is to go be out in the community, make those connections, get to know who those sort of frequent flyers are. Now, one of the next steps is that we know a lot of the landscape in terms of who's the most involved or at risk of this kind of activity. Is how do we try and identify some opportunities to maybe direct people to services, whatever it is for them, if it's job training, if it's mental health help, addictions help, those kind of things, to get them out of that pipeline before it's too late, before they either, they're a victim of a homicide or they're a shooter. And then we have to look at the accountability measures. But, the long-winded answer to what I think was a fairly simple question, but it's not as just looking at previously incarcerated people. It's a bigger picture, but that's one important piece.
Yeah, and I appreciate
if I can just add just really quickly is because often that is a frequent response to seeing this data. I think a natural response to seeing this data. But I think what Chief Davis lifted up is very important to understand. I used to say what I learned in elementary school: all squares are rectangles, but all rectangles are squares, or something like that. But so the vast majority of people who are released from custody, released from incarceration, will not engage in gun violence, right? Although the vast majority of people who engage in gun violence will have been locked up before, right? And so that makes it, so it's not just about, if you've ever been arrested for a crime before, then that makes you at high risk. That's not the truth. Just because the vast majority of folks who have been incarcerated before will not engage in gun violence. But when you start to layer on a number of risk factors, but particularly, and what I forgot to emphasize here, my apologies, this should have been a significant emphasis. I talked about retaliatory violence, but one of the leading risk factors of being involved in gun violence is you're somehow connected to a recent shooting. And so if, for instance, in the last 6 to 12 months, somebody you're connected with is involved in a shooting, either as victim or suspect, your likelihood to be involved in the future is greater. Right, that's more of a predictor, if you will. Just say a little bit more about this. There's a very fascinating study called Social Contagion that was conducted in Chicago, and they looked at people who had been arrested together. They used that as a proxy of you all are connected, right? So if we're both have been arrested for burglary before, you can assume that, meaning together, we were both arrested in the house for burglary. You can assume we're connected, right? We're friends, we hang out. And so then they looked at people who had been shot or arrested for a shooting after 2 years maybe after these two people got arrested for burglary together. One of them either gets shot or gets arrested for a shooting. The other, on average, was either shot or arrested for a shooting within 18 months after that, pretty overwhelmingly. And so that is more at high risk when somebody you're connected with, somebody you're maybe in a local group together with, is involved in a shooting, and you have these other risk factors. That's what heightens your level of risk. And so that's why one of our recommendations is to implement some sort of regular review of incidents, right? And so that you can look back and say, okay, in the last 20 days, the last 15 days, we've had 3 shooting incidents. What do we know about them? Based upon what we know, what's the likelihood of retaliation? Based upon what we know, who would be retaliated against, who might do the retaliation, and can we get ahead of that, particularly with intensive community-based services?
Okay, and I appreciate the insight from both of you on that. And of course, in Chief in particular, I appreciate your point about, not all folks will recommit. And I think sometimes the state is obviously responsible for working with individuals that are released on parole, and one of their primary responsibilities is to reduce recidivism rates. And I just want to make sure, that we're not getting stuck in our silos to say this is the state's job and they do that, and this is the city's job and we do that, and we're not going to talk to each other because this silo exists. So, and I'm not suggesting that happens.
That's right.
But I do think that there's very valuable information to be transferred there that can help us ultimately get where we want to be. The other thing, though, that I noticed that wasn't brought up, at least in the presentation, yet has been part of our public conversation, is making sure that we're cognizant of systemic solutions, right? So whether you're talking about individuals experiencing homelessness, growing up in poverty, hunger, folks who have, unfortunately been targets of racism, right? I think all of those could be things that contribute to this as well. And we have this need to really solve the immediate urgent thing that's in our face. But I think we have to get to a point where we're also talking about long-term solutions, because I appreciate the data that you shared, and I've talked about this at least quite a bit, that Green Bay is still a very safe community. And we are below the national average on some of this stuff. But one of the things that I don't ever want our community to do is become desensitized to a growth in crime that we don't want in our community. And I think that there are ways for us to be proactive about addressing that. I think having you guys here today and talking about this is one of those very first steps. But I appreciate the time that you took to provide this data. And I know that we've got a lot of work to do on this yet, but it's a good start. So thank you.
No, thank you. I think that's exactly right.
Thanks, Alder. Alder Galvin and then Alder Weary.
Thank you, Your Honor. Chief Davis, I appreciate in the very beginning when you first came here and you started your job right in the middle of this mess, and everybody was offering you everything you needed to try and stop it, and you were patient and calm and collected and said you wanted to wait until you had this study done before you started using resources and implementing solutions or possible solutions. So I applaud you on this. This information is revealing, and it's accurate, and it's something that can actually be acted on. But to the extent of coming up with solutions, you already have the team out there. You want to add more in the future if you can. But as the data shows, a percentage of these people were on probation or parole. And any officer you can talk to, the amount of times they pick up people that have violated probation or parole, they attempt to have them placed back in custody, and because of the criminal justice system and the abysmal state it's in right now, we all know that that doesn't always happen, and a lot of these perpetrators, as I said, are awaiting criminal charges, sometimes for years, and they're out there reoffending. Is there any thought to working with the District Attorney's Office, probation, and parole, and some of the other state agencies to maybe fast-track some of these individuals that have been identified as people within our community that are making it unsafe for everybody?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, one of the key players at the table when you do shooting reviews is parole and probation, for just that reason. Because a lot of times they may recognize opportunities with some of their clients that they can help us with, and understanding the tremendous workload that they're dealing with as well. That where I've seen that work in the past is when they're part of these conversations with us as we review these shootings and who we're seeing again and again. They do tend to focus their resources more closely on those folks. So you're spot on.
Okay, and as it pertains to community services, everybody wants the police department to solve everybody's problems. And as we all know, police work has gotten far and above just dealing with the bad guys. They're involved in community relations, building trust amongst the population. They're in programs with youth to try and help change attitudes within our community. But like Harry Sidney has an organization in which he deals with at-risk use, and I know there's several others within this community that are NGOs. Is there any thought to trying to find the funds or working with these individuals that when these people in our community have been identified, that we can kind of get them tracked into these programs? Even if we could stop one, you could possibly be stopping some real horrendous things in the future.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the two things that we're talking about here along those lines are focus and so focus on the people who actually have the problem, and coordination among the whole constellation of nonprofits, social service agencies, government agencies, city, county, state agencies that all have pieces of this puzzle. And when those two things are lacking, then we tend to spin our wheels a little bit in dealing with this issue. And so where I'd like to see us go from here, and I think we've got the beginnings of a blueprint with David's work and his team's work, is the beginning of that focus and a model for that coordination that needs to happen among all these different groups. And, sometimes what that might look like is our police officers who are encountering somebody who they're worried about, who's at risk, might be a connection with a nonprofit like the one you talked about to come alongside that person and try and get them out of that lifestyle. But no, you're absolutely right.
Yeah, and if I can, I think that's exactly right. Just a few pieces. I think that's the type of support that we'd like to continue to provide, and how we develop community organizations to provide this type of service. As Chief Davis said, that really, the two things I talk about is specificity and intensity, right? And so a great program that's not focused on the highest risk folks will not reduce, violence. It might achieve some other great things, right? But it's not going to reduce violence because it's not focused on the right people. A good program focused on the right people obviously are not going to do it either because it's not a good program. But there are some really good programs in Green Bay. I was able to meet with a number of service providers and hear about more, that we know that there are organizations and people there who are committed to it. And then we just have to have better coordination and a process of connecting them with them and informing them. Right. And a example I give all the time. I can't believe we're an hour in. I'm only just giving this example is a shooting occurs, and Chief Davis and I might be in the same. We're both 24 years old. We have 3 previous arrests. We're in the same kind of familiar grouping setting. Sorry, but then Chief Davis gets shot, and then I am upset. He's my friend. He's my group member, and I'm on social media vowing revenge. Right, that sequence of events happens frequently. Right, and if we have better monitoring of those type of situations, but that's an example where I may not have done anything illegal, right? But based upon my risk factors and what I'm pledging to do, I am somebody likely to make good on that, right? And so we want to dispatch somebody who is going to engage, right, me in this example immediately, right? And there are community organizations, people in the community, people who've turned their own lives around, who have been in trouble in it before, who are now incredible examples. It's those type of people that we can provide structure and training with and to, and then be able to dispatch in that way. And we've seen that be really effective when it's structured well and well coordinated and intensive. And that's the type of partnership I think that a process like this can have with community service providers.
Thank you. One other, I think 2 other points. One kind of gets back to Alder Johnson's comments about identifying individuals coming out of the criminal justice system. And I understand the caution that you expressed, Chief. But if we've identified, I believe it's 11 groups or crews already within this community, if we could work with probation and parole, that is, these individuals that are related to these groups or crews are about to be released, if they could be identified to the police department to keep tabs on them and gather intelligence, maybe get them involved in some of these programs we've talked about to try to ensure that they don't repeat, that they don't end up going down the wrong path again once they're out. Using intelligence to kind of keep it all together. Are there any thoughts towards that?
The short answer is yes. And, that's a part of this. That's a part of this process, again, of the shooting review process and, those regular check-ins and establishing those regular contacts and relationships with folks from parole and probation. And I know this is something that I think Commander Warwick probably has some can weigh in on as well. But I mean, the short answer is yes, that's going to be an important part of this approach.
Commander Warwick?
Engagement that the department's done over the last 3 years is all about building the relationships. And when these shootings occur and we identify the people that are involved, we have officers, and some of them are in this room, that will go speak to the friends of the friends to try to start to have that conversation and try to divert these people from making these poor decisions. We've got this. SROs are a critical part in this. They have the connection with the children in the schools, and then we have the youth advocates in the schools, and then we have mentoring programs in the community, like Harry Sidney, Better Days Mentoring. There's other mentoring programs in juvenile justice with Donnell. I mean, it's a coordinated effort to get people who live and work and are with these people that are making these decisions, so that we can give them the message to do that. So, and every shooting, we as a department, we hold them accountable. We respond to the crime, but we then take a more holistic approach to try to get in front of these people so that we can make some better life decisions together with them. And we've been doing that, and it's part of the gun violence restructuring strategy that we have currently and will be doing.
Thank you. And finally, Chief, with everything that's been said here tonight, I know you're sitting there. I'm sure Commander Warwick and the officers, supervisors sitting behind me are going, holy cow, how much more are they going to pile on our plate? And where are we going to get the resources? We're short detectives right now. We're short community police officers so that we can make sure we have enough officers on the road to answer calls for service. It's not simply saying, give them more money and hire the people, because part of the problem is hiring officers just to meet the complement we need right now. But I'm looking forward to suggestions from the police department prior to budget time, so we can take a look at it and see if there is something we can do with the resources that we have, even if we have to reconfigure things to try and make some of this happen. Like I said earlier tonight, 99.9% of the people in this community want peace. They want to go to bed at night. They want to get up in the morning and know their kids can go to school without being at risk, that they can go to the grocery store without being at risk. And anything that we can do to make that happen, we have to do. The people that are creating this hazardous environment are a small, small percentage of our community. And I think we need to keep that in focus as we move forward, but that doesn't mean we ignore the small stuff. I've always said if you sweat the small things, you take care of the big things. A lot of these individuals that we're talking about tonight are the ones that are committing petty crimes from jaywalking on up to homicide. And we need to focus on everything that they're doing and make them accountable for it. Thank you.
Thanks, Alder. Alder Weary and then Alder Grant.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Mr. Mohammed, and your group in the Green Bay Police Department did a excellent report. It's very comprehensive. Appreciate all the work you did on that. And I was one of the ones who asked for the residence info because I know I'm asked, and I'm sure everybody else is too, where is everybody from? And I have no idea. So I'm glad you presented that. I do have a deeper dive question on that. Is there a definition of residence? Is it a length of time, 6 months, year, 5 years? How did you determine residence?
Yeah, good question. I mean, it was, so I'm going to ask Lisa to respond to that. But I think when we looked at did they have a Green Bay residence? I don't know if we even had access to information about length of time. But Lisa, remind me on that.
Yeah, so we used two sources. We used both the Green Bay PD criminal histories as well as the Wisconsin state court records. So what we were looking for was in Green Bay PD's criminal histories, they had listings of residences over time. Same with the statewide court cases. So we were looking for whatever source had a residence closest to the time of the incident. And we defaulted to that residence for the purpose of coding.
All right, I appreciate it. So perhaps that's something we can try to discern in future reports, only because it might send a little bit of a false narrative if they've been here a day or two, and that's the last data we had, that they're actually Green Bay residents. They might have gravitated here for whatever reason, and they're really not from here, but they lived here for a week, and so we call them a Green Bay resident. That's just an observation. Briefly, I wanted to confer with Alder Johnson and Alder Galvin on their comments that this is a community issue. It's not a City of Green Bay government issue only. We can't just throw a lot of money on it ourselves and expect results. So I would expect, and I've heard positive comments here, that we can work with the school district on educating and catching early, working with the county, social services and the drug task force, working with the state and nonprofits. And it has to be a team effort. It's not going to work, and I hear that. And so that's what the community is going to expect. And I appreciate your work. Thanks.
Thanks, Alder. Alder Grant? No? Yeah, Alder Weary. Okay, cool. Alder Stoyer?
Thank you, Your Honor. I'd like to thank Mr. Mohammed as well and the police department for their great report here. This more or less goes with toward the end of the report as far as recommendations. I know that the police department, we do have an issue with a few less folks on the force, but it was under point 2, implementing a gun violence reduction strategy. The second bullet point, they talk about the police department and prosecutors and other law enforcement partners should work collaboratively, which I agree with. I think one of the issues that's been brought up in the past is that the DA's office has fewer prosecutors. We have had a problem with that over time, and it sounds like everybody is saying this is a very important issue. Even though very few people are maybe involved in this, it's still an issue that they want to move on quickly to take care of. So I don't know if anybody can answer to that, if the goal is to try to get these situations taken care of quickly. But if we don't have enough prosecutors in that could be a problem. So can anybody lend some light on that?
Yeah, Alder Stoyer, I can speak to that. We work very well with the Brown County DA's office, and I have to say I am continually amazed at how much work that office gets done as short on resources as they are. Gun violence cases obviously tend to be a little bit higher priority, and we also have, for a lot of gun offenses and other offenses that you see in this sometimes federal prosecution is appropriate, and that's why we've established the partnerships that we have with especially the ATF, the FBI, and the U.S. Attorney's Office. They're tremendous resources when the time is appropriate for federal prosecution, so that's another strength that we can leverage. But really, what this does is it helps all of us in the justice system, because we're all short on resources these days. It helps us to focus those efforts where they're going to get the highest return on that investment. And this is where we start with that focus, because the resource problem just isn't going to get solved overnight.
All right. Thank you for that. I appreciate it.
Thanks, Alder. Any other questions from council? Seeing none, I think we have. Motion to open the floor has been made by Alder Scannell, seconded by Alder Weary. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. So if you would like to pose a question or make a comment, just approach the podium and state your name and address.
Hi, everyone. My name is Sandra Rank. I live at 4336 Annabelle Circle, Green Bay, Wisconsin. I want to thank you for doing this study. I think it's really, really important. As a lifetime resident of our town, I can tell you the last couple of years have been really different for me, experiencing as a citizen and as a business person in the downtown district. But that aside, I wanted to talk to you today about another aspect of gun violence. I'm going to try to say it without crying. So I know many of the people in this room today. Some of you I don't know. I've had the great privilege of talking with Chief Davis, Brian Johnson at length, messages into Troy Struckenbach, many other different people in our community about the drug problem in our town. My son, Mitchell Rank, who was 28, died of a fentanyl overdose in January. So I've had a 10-year, frankly, hell ride on drug abuse and fentanyl in our town. So drug abuse is a big part of this violence up here. And Mitchell was a very loved, very supported young man with a very bright future that's completely gone. And what I like about what I'm hearing today is that we're working together as a community about what can we do different. Like, what can we do to work together? How can we use our resources differently? I'm telling you, since Mitchell died at the end of January, I don't have a single day that goes by where someone's not reaching out to me saying, we're dealing with this. This is happening with us. I was at 3 fentanyl deaths since, November. So I'm hopeful that we can. The drug problem is very complex and complicated and comprehensive. That's a whole nother topic. The fentanyl piece is the piece why I wanted to stand up and say something today. I feel like we owe our community an awareness campaign on, especially the young people, because 100% of the time that they pick up anything that they buy off the street, it's Russian roulette. I was just at a presentation with the Brown County Sheriff's Department, and they said basically 90% of the stuff that you find on the street has fentanyl in it. We had, from a non-confirmed but reliable source, we had 37 drug overdoses in Brown County in the month of May. So I'm here to ask you to help us help you. Like, what can we do as a community to help you with fentanyl overdose? What could we do? Can we raise private money? What can we do as a county for rehab? Brown County really doesn't have a whole lot for detox, rehab. I've lived it for 10 years. I've been with I can't say enough about our law enforcement. I've had 10 overdoses with the Brown County Sheriff Department. The people were unfreaking believable. They were amazing people. Everybody wants to help. People in our community want to help, but we need some guidance and some ideas and some suggestions on what we can do to help. So that was what I wanted to say today. So thank you for your time.
Thank you so much for your testimony, ma'am, and I'm so sorry for your loss. Question from council? No?
I'd be happy to meet with anybody one-on-one. I could talk for like 4 hours on all the stuff that I've gathered in the last 3 months. My eyes are like freaking wide open. Like, I can't believe I'm not dead from a fentanyl overdose because I was giving mouth to mouth. I didn't even know what was going on, and I have a front row seat to it. I can't imagine what the normal person doesn't know. I mean, it's frightening. It's super scary. Like the Brown County Sheriff said to me, or said in the presentation, 2 things that chilled me right to the bone. Number 1, it's so bad we can't arrest our way out of this. And number 2, we're seeing the tiniest tip of the iceberg. He said, we thought that it couldn't be worse with meth. This makes that look like kindergarten. And I'm telling you, my child is everybody's child. I mean, it's a supported, loved child that's dead. It's not just who you might stereotypically think it is. It's touching our whole community. So if anybody wants to meet one-on-one, I'm happy to help. I want to help. That's why I'm standing up here. It's not easy to be standing up here today. I'd rather be like a million other places. So.
Well, thank you again for
Yep.
visiting our meeting. I'll be following up. I'm sure others will as well.
Right.
So
Thanks.
thank you.
Thanks, Randy.
Any other folks from the public, either online or in person, who'd like to make a comment? Seeing none? Motion to close the floor made by Alder Scannell, seconded by Alder Galvin. All in favor, signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. The floor is closed. All right. Well, thank you again, Mr. Mohammed and Chief Davis and Commander Warwick, and a particular call out for Commander Warwick, who really identified NICJR as the appropriate organization to do some of this work in concert with the police department here. So we just wanted to thank you and recognize you for all the work you've put into this.
Thank you, everybody. I want to also express my appreciation to Commander Warwick, who's been extraordinary during this process. Thank you.
Thank you, David. Have a good one. On to appointments.
Motion to approve.
We have a motion to approve those new appointments that are before us. That was made by Alder Scannell, seconded by Alder Stevens. Any questions or comments on the appointees? Seeing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. The ayes have it, and those appointments are made. On to ordinances, second read.
Suspend the rules.
Just before that, we will go to Alder Hutchison.
Yeah, I'd like to poll K5. And hopefully we can address this in the August 2nd council meeting. And whatever it takes, if it has to go before the Plan Commission. And I'm polling this even though I'm not one for polling and delaying. I think we need to give our Home Builders Association a chance to look at this so we're united in this text. The one that's being polled is a lot of text. It's not a simple text, it's a lot. So that's why I'm asking for this.
Very good. So the motion is to hold this item over until our August 2nd? August 2nd meeting. Is there a second for that?
Second.
Seconded by Alder Grant. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. And just on that note, appreciate Alder Hutchison for making that motion. We did have a discussion internally here with city staff and home builders and had a lot of good dialogue and exchange of ideas. So just want some time to flesh that out. So appreciate that motion being made. Now entertain a motion from Alder Scannell. Correct. Motion to suspend the rules and take up these ordinances with one roll call vote with the exception of K5. That was made by Alder Scannell and seconded by Alder Johnson. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. The rules are suspended. Motion to adopt, I think, by Alder Johnson, seconded by Alder Scannell. And we will need to use the board on these.
Thank you, Alders. You may vote. like to be recorded? Okay, thank you.
Fine. Oh, there-
Yeah,
It was unanimous.
that, it is disappearing on me.
Yeah.
I don't understand
No-
what it is, so.
Not sure why that's happening, but that was unanimous vote unless there's an objection from council. So, seeing that, we will move along to the INS report. Oh, sorry. On to INS.
Committee of the whole, Mayor?
Very good point. We did amend the agenda to entertain that committee of the whole item. So we will do that at this time. So for people following along here and at home, this is consideration with possible action on approving the creation of the Baird Creek Parkway Neighborhood Association. Any comments from the gallery? Seeing none, I'll entertain a motion. Motion to approve made by Alder Scannell, seconded by Alder Stevens. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. I just want to recognize and thank the members from our newly formed neighborhood association for being here, for forming the association. I think everybody in this room understands the importance of neighborhood associations and sort of the history and strength of them in Green Bay and the example that we set for other communities across the state and really country. So thank you for stepping up and forming the association. We very much appreciate it. So thanks for doing it. And I think we're going to grab a quick picture if you guys are interested in coming up here. So just a 30-second timeout.
She's not here.
You guys want to do it up here? Come on up. Scoot over to the other side. Squeeze in here.
Hang out with them.
What are you guys doing? Maybe I'll stand down here. All right. Will, can you get everybody? All right. Awesome. Thank you. Yeah, thanks again for doing it. And once it's formal, once I sign the resolution, we'll be sure that you get a copy of that.
Excellent. Thank you very much.
Thanks for doing it. Yeah, you bet. Thanks for being here. All right, so with that, we are on to the Improvement and Services report. Motion to approve made by Alder Scannell, seconded by Alder Stevens. Any items here to be handled separately? This is INS. Any items to be held separately? Seeing none. All in favor, signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. That report has been approved. Here is protection and policy. Motion to approve made by Alder Scannell, seconded by Alder Stevens. Any items here to be handled separately? 9, 10, and 13. Any others? Hearing no others, all in favor of approving the remainder of that report, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. The report has been approved with the exception of items 9, 10, and 13. Item 9, I think, was pulled by Alder Stevens.
Yes, I understand that the attorney's here.
Okay.
So motion to open the floor.
Second.
Motion has been made to open the floor by Alder Stevens, seconded by Alder Scannell. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. The floor is open. So this is item 9, to recommend the non-renewal of application for Class B combination license for the Cannery Market LLC at 320 North Broadway with a change of agent. Do we have somebody on the Zoom who would like to speak to this? Or in person?
I guess so.
That's okay. Again, we're understanding that we're looking for the attorney representing the Cannery Market LLC.
I'd like to make a motion to hold that. for now.
Okay. What date?
Next meeting.
Okay. Alder Stevens makes a motion to hold this item until our next meeting, which is June 28th. Alder Johnson.
Yeah, just maybe inquiry with the clerk, because I believe the renewal period for this is coming up. So is there sufficient time to hold this and actually approve it before the renewal period?
Yeah, so we always have a last chance meeting just before the licenses expire, June 30th, and that would be June 28th, the June 28th council meeting.
When is protection policy?
P&P is on June 20th.
Okay, great, thank you.
Thank you, Alder. So we do. Yes. Can I do that right? Do I have to close it?
We should close the floor first.
Okay. Entertain a motion to close the floor first before the motion. So made by Alder Johnson, seconded by Alder Stevens. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. The floor is closed. And then we did have a motion from Alder Stevens, seconded by Alder Galvin, to hold this item until June 28th. Any discussion on that? Seeing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. That item is held over. We are on to item 10. Item 10, okay.
Motion open the floor. If you're interested.
Okay. Motion to open the floor made by Alder Scannell, seconded by Alder Stevens. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. The floor is open. And a reminder just to approach the podium, state your name and address if you'd like to speak to this item, which is to recommend non-renewal for the 2022-23 renewal application for a Class B combination license by Dual Sports Bar LLC. And just a reminder for folks offering testimony, we do have a 3-minute time limit. So with that said, name and address, sir. Thanks for being here.
Michael Kane, 3308 Sitka Street, Green Bay, Wisconsin, 54311. First of all, ladies and gentlemen of the council, I'd say good evening. And Mayor, thanks for letting me speak tonight. The first thing I want to do is apologize to the council for my last appearance here, specifically Lieutenant Mahoney. I kind of gave him a hard time in the Protection and Policy Committee meeting, and you know, I feel as though I came off as a little rash, maybe combative, and a little too passionate. But today I'm coming in front of you as a businessman, and I'm going to start with a brief history of Dual Sports Bar. 2019, I was approached by a friend of mine, asked, you know, if we'd be interested in investing in a building, bar and grill. Long story short, you know, after contemplating whirlwind, within a week, we decided we'd be interested. Fast forward a little bit, we've been open for exactly 583 days, and we have been challenged by our landlord for 516 of them. We spent over $30,000 in attorney's fees during that challenge. In the summer of 2021, we were contacted by the GBPD regarding the newly overpopulated nightlife on Main Street, and we're asked to attend a neighborhood awareness meeting. I believe all 4 businesses in that corridor were asked to attend, and ourselves and Crown and Common were the only ones represented at that meeting. We sat down with the GBPD, the city attorney, and a few others, and we talked about the manifest of people and how or what to look for when dealing with certain individuals. Although at that time, a lot of things were brought up, but my only concern was that the PD keep us informed. We can't solve the problems if we don't know there is one. I ask that when the GBPD makes contact or has any information we could use, please share it with us. Following the meeting, the PD delivered to us on a weekly basis for about 4 weeks a list of individuals that may have been less than desirable or of interest for some reason or another, and we used that information to our advantage and removed the problems before they could start. Subsequently, the PD stopped coming in, and I and the staff were under the impression that the PD implied that we were doing well and no longer needed their assistance. And in our minds, we were thinking no news is good news. Early 2022, exactly January 13th, during a routine compliance check, was the first time I had spoke to the PD since late that last summer. During a compliance check, I was informed that one of our managers, who was actually training a new bartender that evening, had a suspended bartender's license for an unpaid ticket. While the compliance check was going on and prior to the completion, we were able to produce a licensed bartender. At that time, the manager and myself were cited for serving without a license. The manager has since paid his ticket and mine was contested and has not yet been resolved. During the compliance check, there were numerous uniformed officers and agents from the Department of Revenue. At this time, the PD could have made us aware of the amount of police calls, and even that we were becoming a problem or were already a problem. And we would have been allotted plenty of time prior to this renewal to prove that we have the ability to fix those problems. April 25th, I was pulled over on the side of the highway in Georgia to attend a Zoom meeting with the Protection and Policy Committee meeting regarding our outdoor patio expansion. I was caught off guard and oblivious when the PD started out by saying Dual Sports Bar and Grill had 197 calls since July 1st. Although that number was immediately changed to 147, but being unprepared and having no knowledge of maybe less than 10 of those calls, I was unable to produce any type of defense and had to sit in my car on the side of the road and accept the recommendation from the committee. May 17th, 2022, after pleading with the council, the outdoor patio expansion was ultimately denied. Understandably, there were concerns with the high number of police calls, and at the same time, during that meeting, there were some great questions asked, and I'll touch base on those later. May 23rd, 2022, I attended another Zoom meeting, this time from the comfort of my dining room. Prior to the meeting, after receiving a phone call from a reporter from WAUI, I was informed that the GBPD supplied an 11-page document to the council recommending denial to renew the license for Dual Sports Bar and Grill. Immediately, I rushed home so I could review the 11-page document and begin to try and prepare a defense to any and all allegations set forth. I was a little surprised to see that out of the 11 pages, 8 of them were irrelevant to the renewal decision-making process. I prepared the best I could, but some of the information supplied by the PD was just simply something I was not prepared to defend. During this meeting, there were 3 questions in particular that stood out, one asked by Alder Stevens and 2 asked by Alder Morgan. The first question that was asked by Alder Stevens was the amount of police calls.
Excuse me, sir, your time has expired. So I apologize for cutting you off, but we do allow 3 minutes for testimony. Do we have questions for our guest?
If I could.
Alder Burnett?
I respect your position, Mayor. You have to run a effective and timely meeting, but given the circumstances, I'd like to make a motion to suspend the rules to let the gentleman speak longer. And I can.
Motion has been made to suspend the rules, seconded by Alder Johnson. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. The ayes have it.
Thank you. So, there are 3 questions that stood out in particular. The first question that was asked by Alder Stevens was, has the amount of police calls as of May 14th increased, stayed the same, or decreased? GBPD's response was that they stayed the same. If you take a look at the police calls going all the way back to now, April 25th, when we became aware of the problems, in order, there was 1 disturbance call on 5-1. That originated in front of the Oval Office and completely bypassed Dual. We have a west-facing camera, and we can verify that information. There were 2 calls on 5-14. One is still under investigation, and the other one was a reported theft, which turned out to be false. Young lady thought her purse was stolen. The PD showed up the next day, and her purse was behind the bar, full and intact. And lastly, 1 call on 5-29, in which a female was denied entry because her ID was from Illinois and looked and felt fake. So she called the police on herself. Considering all this, as well as the newly enforced policies, you can clearly see that in the last 6 weeks and 1 day, Dual has done a tremendous amount of work towards making things better. So I would consider the PD's response as inaccurate. As a matter of fact, last week we had 0 contact with the police, and the week before that, we had 1 instance, and that was the female calling the police on herself. The second question asked by Alder Morgan was if the county or the sheriff's department calls are included in the number provided by the PD. The PD went around this question saying it could be, without giving a definitive answer. The answer to Alder Morgan's question should have been a definitive yes, as the use of the GURP system, which the PD referenced, was made mandatory by all surrounding departments in November 2020. The third question asked by Alder Morgan after an extensive and unsubstantiated dialogue was basically, did the GBPD have a record of the amount of calls that were made to the lot across the street, the Pumps Tires parking lot, but actually then led to calls at Dual? The GBPD stated that they would get dispatched to the Pumps Tires lot on a regular basis, but then stated that they did not pull the calls to that address. After requesting the Pumps Tire lot calls ourselves, we discovered that there were no calls recorded to Pumps Tires lot ever. Since April 25th, at the first Protection and Policy Committee meeting, or prior to, we have established a no drinking rule for the bartenders, purchased metal detectors, continually use our ID scanners, refuse entry to out-of-state IDs, accept ID cards only, no paper, no exceptions. Enforce a relaxed dress code, refuse entry to the rear doors after 10 p.m., patrol the parking lot during and after hours. We posted signs stating that our parking lot is under 24-hour surveillance. We perform basic background checks for all new hires, and now, as of last weekend, we started closing 30 minutes to bar close, before bar close. Recently, we just started working with retired PD Captain John Laux. Yes, he did give me permission to use his name, and he informed us that his job with the PD used to be the one of the officers that would work with the bars in the area to help them fix some of the very same problems we're dealing with. He stated that his recommendation to those bar owners then were proven to be successful, and as of last Friday, we have implemented all of them. That brings us to today. I ask that when the council takes in all of what I have said, that you ask questions. It is very hard to think that any decision would be hinged on questions that weren't asked and answers that weren't given. The decision should be solely made on the merits and ultimately on the law. As of today, Dual Sports Bar Grill has 0 infractions in 583 days, with 1 employee infraction being a non-licensed bartender, and he has since accepted his punishment and paid his ticket. A lot of calls made to the address of 1114 Main Street are unconstitutionally vague and without full reports or analysis should not and simply cannot be used to make any informed decisions as to whether they originated or even were associated with Dual Sports Bar and Grill. We are talking about a substantial investment, life savings for myself and another one of the partners. Therefore, I ask again that the council make the decision based on the merits only and nothing else. The GBPD took the time and prepared a list of calls, starting with Dual at 111 calls. They claim that 47 disturbance calls, Dual called in 4 of them. The question you got to ask yourself as a council, is it possible that Dual didn't know about the 23 other calls and only called in the 24 that they actually knew about? 2 of those calls were weapons calls. Dual called in 0. The police incident report shows a weapons call in 311, which no report was produced, and another in 424. Is it possible that we didn't know about either of them? Were they actually Dual customers? Were they just walking through the parking lot? Could it have been self-defense? Could the person have been sober and had a permit for the weapon? Then it brings us to the Oval Office. 14 disturbance calls, Oval calling in 11 of those. Prior to January of 2022, the Oval Office parking lot was directly behind Dual. Is it possible that some of the calls that originated or that were on Dual's record originated from the Oval Office? These are just some of the questions you have to ask yourself. Then the PD went on to state, compare numbers in 2019 and 2020, 2018 and 2019. Based on the standards today and the GURP system that's in place, those numbers can't even be compared no longer. The comparison data would be inaccurate and incomplete using today's standards. Then we have Excess Nightclub. There are 8 calls to Excess Nightclub. 5 disturbances, Excess called on 3 of them. Excess is flanked by 2 bars, one with similar capacity, that being the Oval Office at almost 300, and one limited to 99 persons being Dual. Can you consciously consider, as the council members, this number as accurate? Considering the Oval Office had 83 calls and Dual had 111, and then there's Excess in the center of these 2 buildings with 7 calls. Do you think there's the slightest chance that some of the calls made to 1114 Main Street originated across the street or in the alleyway leading to Excess? I'd like to note that the entrance to the Pomps parking lot, which is used exclusively by Excess customers, is directly in front of Dual, as all the other access is fenced off. Therefore, 100% of Excess's customers end up in front of Dual at one point or another. Then we have Crown and Common. 34 disturbances, Crown called in 27 of them. I have to commend the owner for calling on 27 of them, but one thing that sets us and them apart, we, since the day we opened, have shared a parking lot with both the Oval Office and Excess, and most recently, almost everyone else. And our line of sight doesn't offer us the same views that Crown and Common has with their parking lot. I'm sure the owner can attest to the fact that the people that frequent Main Street go bar to bar almost never stay where they park their car or started their night. At what point do these people start being held accountable for their own actions versus the bar or its owners? So now, I simply encourage the council to consider the merits and ask all the questions ask all the questions they deem necessary to make a clear and informed decision based on actual facts and disregard, at least until proven accurate, the number of police calls provided by the PD. Keep in mind when making this decision that Dual has had no infractions directly related to us, that the police calls and possibly inaccurate association to Dual should not be considered. We were given absolutely no warning whatsoever to the extent of the police calls. I know the relationship now with the PD may be fractured, but we'd like to mend that moving forward. Our willingness to do whatever it takes to fix the problem. Those are the things that should be considered, when making this decision. And again, like I said, I encourage the council to ask all these questions because, I think they're relevant and I think the facts are relevant. And I think the lack of analysis with the police reports is also important. That's all I have.
Thank you, sir. Questions for our guest? Looks like Alder Grant is in the queue. Alder?
Thank you. Of the new recommendations, can you specify what the changes are that you've made recently?
Yes, I can. Since the April 25th meeting, and some of these things were done prior to the April 25th meeting, we established a no drinking rule for all bartenders. That actually happened before that meeting, so that's been in place for probably 3 or 4 months now. We purchased metal detectors on the advice of this other local bar owners. They thought it might be a good idea. We continually use our ID scanners diligently. We refuse entry to all out-of-state IDs. We do make exceptions. People in town for sports events, stuff like that. We'd obviously make exceptions. We enforce a dress code. It's a more relaxed dress code. It's not suit and tie kind of stuff. But no hoods, no kicked hats, no saggy pants, stuff like that. We refuse entry to the back doors after 10 p.m. on the weekends. That kind of gives us a clear, we have more control with customers coming through the front door. Been very effective. We patrol the parking lot on a regular basis. One of the bouncers or myself or one of the other managers will put on a bright yellow vest and walk the parking lot, do spot checks and stuff like that. We posted signs that state that the parking lot is under 24-hour surveillance, and it's been those have helped, as well as the PD installed some cameras. I think those, I don't think we've had any, since they've been there the last 2 weekends, I don't think we've had any police interactions. So that's very efficient. And then just, recently, maybe about 3 weeks ago, all new hires, we do basic background checks, we do CCAP them. And after speaking with retired Captain Lokes, we started closing 30 minutes prior to bar close. His advice was don't be the last bar open, because that's where people go looking for the party, looking for the hookup, looking for, and that's where the problems start. So we've implemented that the last weekend. We kind of started it the weekend before, but last weekend we did it and it worked out. I think the PD can contest that that it's been working. And that's mostly what we did.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Alder. Alder Stoyer.
Thank you, Your Honor. Mr. Kane, thanks for coming in again. I know it's been a long process. It states that the Green Bay Police Department, they stated that you, the leaseholder, and Mr. Rosario, the liquor license holder, have not made a full faith effort to reduce the number of disturbances at Dual. That's right off the bat from the police department. So, and we heard the police talk about it, we've heard you talk about it, and that's the conundrum that we have right now.
Right.
And actually, like believing you, believing the police. So that's part of it right there. Can you testify to that?
Yeah, actually, I touched base on that earlier. that was one of the questions, I believe, Alder Stevens asked if we did anything to reduce the amount of police calls. And that's where, so that Alder Stevens asked, as of May 14th, if we had done anything. We immediately, as of April 25th, which would have been the first time we became aware of the situation, we immediately started then. And like I stated earlier, with that, with all the stuff that I just listed, just read off, we have only had, and I say that lately, we've had one call for disturbance since April 25th. So if you compare some of the numbers going back, there were 2 or 3 calls a week, and we've had one since April 25th. So I would say we've substantially, made fixes.
I guess one of the questions I have is that, many times the police department will work with the establishment, and have you talked with the police much over these last 2 months and corroborated that?
I've reached out to them several times. I think I did get a return phone call one time. I believe Lieutenant Allen was on vacation, and I think communications kind of fell apart after the Protection of Policy Committee meeting. I think they kind of, and talking to other people, I was advised to kind of go to the higher up, to the next step, and try to get something going. But I'm 100% willing to work. I think the PD will acknowledge that. They know I'll work with them no matter what. I'm easy. I'm almost excited to work with them. I thought we had a good relationship back at the end of last summer. They were bringing us information that was, that helped us. I think it was a good thing, and I think it just dropped off. And like I said, we just assumed that since they weren't coming around, then there's
Right.
probably not nothing, no
Well,
problems.
We'll
with
ask them as well. Another thing is the incident where a security staff member was accused of providing cocaine to a female patron who was then sexually assaulted by the staff member. And that seemed, last time when you testified, it seemed like it was kind of poo-pooed, like it wasn't that big a deal. And I'm having a hard time with that one as well.
Well, all I have to say about it's a very unfortunate incident, and it's still under investigation. There's a criminal complaint that's readily available. And as far as the comment, the cocaine comment, in that report, in the criminal complaint, it states that it was a stripper from the Oval Office that actually offered the drugs to the victim. I was hoping I didn't have to touch base on that. Just like I said, it's an ongoing investigation.
Right.
All I have is the camera footage. I supply that to police. All I know is what I read in the criminal complaint. I don't. Obviously it's
Right.
very very isolated incident. But the criminal complaint is readily available, and I would encourage. It's unfortunate that we're here now and you didn't get a chance to read it, but it's very revealing. The person that actually made that statement, that the bouncer was offering the cocaine, has since refused to, in the criminal complaint, she's since refused to make an in-person statement. So this statement was made over the phone. I don't know, I guess I don't have the details other than what I read in the criminal complaint, but I think that's very important to know that the witness
Right.
is
Okay.
uncooperative, so.
I appreciate that. I'll just, one other quick comment. I know you invested a lot of money in this place. It sounded like $350,000, is that correct?
Yes.
And I think, it seemed like you were under the assumption that everything was gonna fly through and it was gonna be all good, but, obviously it didn't work that way, so. We appreciate your effort, but, it still has to go through legal processes, so to speak, so. That's all I have for now.
Thanks, Alder Eck, and then Alder Weary.
Thank you, Mayor. Mr. Kane, I want to piggyback on what Alder Stoyer said about the security guard that has allegedly sexually assaulted this young woman. And I did listen in to the policy and protection. I watched the video footage, and it seemed as if there wasn't proper ID shown for this employee? I know Alder Grant kind of had asked questions about it during that committee meeting. Has there been changes in your policy regarding checking people's ID?
Yep,
I'm
yep.
I'm an employer. I know the process I go through, and if you go through that process, you get their ID, you have more than one form of ID.
Right, and I did touch base on that, and yes, absolutely, every new hire goes through a process now. You know, even as basic as CCAPing them, and sometimes we go a little further. You know, we get, you know, all I can say about that hire is, you know, we hired two individuals. The individual that in the criminal complaint that's, you know, with the assault, and another gentleman. And, I mean, these guys were basically hired to do a job. And they did their job well. I mean, they did their job really good. In the short amount of time that they worked for us, they actually gained a lot of respect from the customers, and things changed. Very, very unfortunate that you know, this kind of stuff even happened. But like I said, we didn't hire them to, you know, to count money. We hired them to sit at the door, check IDs, and keep the bar, you know, in order. And they did that job well. As unfortunate as the incident was, I mean, this individual will be judged someday. And, I mean, he's going to get what he deserves. And that's, I mean, there's no question about that.
So were they an employee or an independent contractor?
They were independent contractors. They were referred to us, and they were basically subcontractors.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Alder Weary, and then Alder Stevens.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Mr. Kane, for coming and answering questions about this. I'm going to piggyback on the same line of questioning here about your hiring process for the security person who was on parole for being, you know, a felon burglar and an arsonist, and, you know, clearly stated there that they were to have no entry into an establishment where the primary business is the sale of alcohol. I mean, is that how you hire people? You don't look into the background?
You know, I guess, you know, basically, you know, when we hired him, but you know, just by looking at him, you could tell he was a little rough around the edges. And no pun intended, you know, it makes sense sometimes to fight fire with fire. A bar owner once said to me, he said, you can't take a kid from Seymour and have him bounce at your establishment with kids that are coming in from South Chicago. They just don't, it just does not work like that. And it's not our policy to not look into them any further. But the name that he did tell us was unfortunately not the name that is on record. And, you know, in hindsight, I wish we could go back in time and do a better job. All I can say is that we absolutely do a better job today and going forward.
Okay. Do you still have independent contractors? I mean, that's seems to be the reason or excuse to not do any kind of checks.
We've talked about that, and I think we've decided that all everybody that works in the building is going to be on our payroll, and I mean, subject to social security numbers, driver's license numbers. You know, we got information on file that would substantiate who they actually claim to be.
Okay, because that obviously that's a difficult one to get by. If you don't hire this person, that doesn't happen. Whether, you know, whatever happens in the end, that doesn't happen.
100%.
If you do a background check, so.
100%.
All right, thanks.
Thanks, Alder Stevens, and then Alder Galvin.
All right, thank you for coming, Mr. Kane.
Yeah,
So
thank
I'm
you.
going to ask you a question again I did last time. Is Mr. Ross here today?
No.
Okay, is there a reason why he's not here
Yeah,
today?
he works second shift at a mill.
Okay, you do realize that this is an important issue of your business?
He does, and same thing that I said last time, is he trusts me. I think he may have a little, public speaking problems, stuff like that, so that's why I'm here.
Well, don't worry, I had the same issue as
Yeah,
you, but I'm here. So.
I think I actually do too, but I'm kind of put in a position where I got no choice.
Okay. Well, unfortunately, I wish he was here. I wish he was here last time at PNTP, because I think it is a very important portion of this situation that we're dealing with, so. But thank you for clarifying.
Thanks, Alder Galvin.
Actually, Your Honor, Alder Morgan has, he must be having a problem with his computer. He put in a request to speak before I did.
Oh, okay. Yeah, it's not showing up here. Alder Morgan.
Mine isn't actually a question. I want to do some clarification on some of the conversation we had at the Protection and Policy meeting. As a background, I drove Brown County squad cars for 4 decades, and several times I did respond in mutual aid to assist Green Bay on different calls. I had mentioned that I had had conversation the day of that meeting with a county deputy, and we had a Pulaski officer with us, and they were questioning on what some of my duties were in all these committees, and I mentioned that a liquor license thing would come up, and he automatically asked me if it was your establishment. And through our conversation, he kept talking about we respond to your establishment and stuff like all that. So I said that night I was told he had, when we left that day, I had total belief that he himself had responded, and in fact, I talked to him the next day. He never did. In checking, I haven't been able to find anything else. My main thing was, at that time, all the calls had swapped out, that there weren't quite as few calls, so I was hoping that at that point, maybe Lieutenant Mahoney had some answers for me if there were more calls or not. He did a great job coming up with what he did have, and so I just wanted to let you know where that came from, and to put it out there that I do not have any Brown County officers that said they responded there. This is strictly them saying we overheard this because of the new equipment that the police have now. He was able to hear these type of calls. So that's just to put that out for you. I have no other question of you.
Thanks, Alder. Alder Galvin.
Thank you, Your Honor. I have some questions for you, but I just want to get some clarification from the police department first, if I may.
Sure.
Okay. Who here is representing the police department on this particular item?
Sit there.
Lieutenant Nate Allen.
Thank you, Lieutenant Allen. Do you stand by the numbers, 111 calls for service to this particular establishment for calls related to this establishment?
I do. I went through these calls 3 times, and I weeded out what was not related that I could tell best of my knowledge or best of combing through the CAD notes.
All right, thank you very much. Sir, I appreciate you coming out here for, I think this is what, the third time you've appeared before us?
Second.
Second. And you pretty much stated everything again today that you did last time. This is your business, your company.
Correct.
Correct? So if money is made there, that's your money, right?
Correct.
You stand to profit from this business
Correct.
and everything that goes on there.
Absolutely.
Okay, so you're responsible for this business.
Yes.
The buck stops with you, correct?
Yes.
So I don't care if it's a subcontractor, independent contractor, or a trusted employee or a relative. When you hire someone in a liquor establishment that's dispensing alcohol to people, a drug, okay? That's your responsibility to make sure you're not over-serving people, that the people in there are of age, that they're following the rules and the laws, and that if there's any problems, you contact the police, correct? That's your
Correct.
responsibility, right?
Yes.
And you have a person, an employee, don't care, contractor, whatever, who allegedly sexually assaults a young lady, and he's on parole not to be in a liquor establishment, and you're unaware of that?
Yes, I was unaware of that.
Okay. And as you describe his job, he did his job well?
He did a great job. He was hired to
You
be a
think if
bouncer.
we asked that young lady, she would think that?
Absolutely not.
All right. And it's unfortunate that it happened.
Very.
111 unfortunate incidents at your establishment.
Correct.
Actually, 112 with this one. 112 unfortunate incidents involving at least 2 police officers at the time I left the department at $55 an hour. 112 times. If they spent even an hour there, how much does that add up to of taxpayer dollars being spent to take care of your establishments and the problems that it generates? And you want us to give you another chance? I'm sorry, sir. You're not getting my vote tonight. Thank you.
Thanks, Alder. Any other questions from council for our guests? None. Thank you.
Thanks.
Any other residents who'd like to speak to this item? And just a reminder to state your name and address for the council.
I'm Hannah Zock, 1509 Ontario Road, Apartment 2, Green Bay, Wisconsin, 54311. I didn't know we only had 3 minutes, so I'll just touch on a few of my points here. Good evening. As I stated, I'm Hannah. I've worked for Jules for 2 years since we opened in 2020. I'm now the bar manager. This establishment has become a huge part of my heart and my family. You know, with an exception of a few less than desirable people who we have gotten rid of, my staff is filled with wonderful individuals. I graduated with 2 college degrees from the University of Wisconsin-Oshkosh in 2018. I have worked vigorously to pay that off. Another one of my employees has graduated with a biochem degree from UWGB. I and multiple others are also CNAs and help the elderly. One of my staff members runs and helped begin a health and fitness center. The one thing that I just really want to point out now, just because of the way that last conversation left off, last summer I was in the bar and there was officers that came in, and with my own 2 ears, we were told, our biggest problem is we want you guys to work with us. No matter how big, no matter how small, please don't be afraid to work with us. Call us whenever you need. And that is exactly what we started to do. We started, you know, getting the problem out of the bar and calling 911. So now it feels like we were told that, but now we're being told it's too many 911 calls. But we were told we're never going to use it against you. Please work with us. You know, I think another important thing to touch base on is, I don't know if anyone really knows, but we do a lot for the community as well. Last summer, we hosted an event for a gentleman by the name Luke Davison, who was diagnosed with accelerated stage 3 Hodgkin's lymphoma. We raised in one day a ridiculous amount of money for him. We worked with Fourth HUA, and that helps wounded veterans. We actually put together a basket for Aaron Landry, who worked for the Sheriff's Department. We're still, even with all this going on, running an event for a dog rescue, Lucky Seven's Dog Rescue. So I think that it is important. I know that we can't go back and change the past, but we have made big changes, and me being a manager, I've seen the changes, and unfortunately, we can't take that back, but we can move forward, and I can tell you that we are willing to do whatever it is that we need to do to make the Green Bay Police Department's job easier and to help us, whatever we need to do. And I just want to reiterate that this group of people is a family, and they really are great people, and I feel like we've been portrayed in a really horrible way. You know, just because there's one bad cookie doesn't mean that we're all bad cookies. And I want to thank you for your time and your understanding, and just understand that we are willing to make the changes and work with you guys and do anything that we need to do. So thank you very much.
Thanks for your testimony. Any questions? All right, thank you. Hey, Craig, you press your button.
Awesome, Your Honor. My name is Kavi Barakshan, 1115 South Monroe Avenue, Green Bay, Wisconsin. I am the owner of the Crown and Common. Just want to make some statements. It gets a little petty in the bar business. Everybody kind of does a lot of backbiting. We're the new kids on the block with being Crown and Common and Dual. As far as excess and Oval Office go, they've been in business for a while. I don't believe they've had as many problems as have occurred in the past couple of years. The neighborhood has changed. I moved back here from Texas, went to Preble High School. Things have changed quite a bit in Green Bay in the past 15 years. That being said, we had a meeting with the police department last summer, and they were pretty clear on the consequences and the repercussions of not following the law. That being, if there's an issue at your bar, you have to call the police department, and they will not hold it against you. And do your best to keep, unsavory people out of the bar. Of course, things happen. They're drinking alcohol. You're right. It's a drug. And they do other things in the parking lots, at pumps. Everyone's parking lots are kind of, it happens outside the bar more often than inside of it. But I'm here on behalf of everyone in the neighborhood. It is difficult. At times, it is very difficult to control what happens outside of the bar. It is our responsibility. We do bear some of the responsibility because we are profiting from people having alcohol. But to speak to Lieutenant Allen and Officer Carlson, I was on the phone with them 2-3 times a week after we had originally met and checking in all the time, how the call's been, what do we need to do. They worked pretty well with me. I had just met the owner of the Oval Office, seems like a decent gentleman. Mike's always seemed like a nice guy. Things happen. It's a difficult business to be in, especially on that side of town. I don't think anybody opens a business with the intention to be a nuisance to the police department or the city. So I just wanted to say that, the police department has been very, very helpful with us. We're doing our best. We have 7 security members on Friday and Saturday night. They patrol the parking lot. We call last call at 1:45, and maybe that's some of the reason they have issues. People want to flood the next bar that's open. You take all the steps that you can. But it is very difficult over there. I think this is a discussion that needs to be had in all the districts that do have entertainment, that if there could be some kind of maybe special assessment or something we can do to provide financial assistance as businesses to have a police officer in the neighborhood. It does often prevent things from happening. They're very reactionary. You call the cops, they're there in a minute. And sometimes, depending upon if someone makes a gun threat, there's 8 squad cars there. I get it. If someone's committing a real crime and they got 8 cars in our neighborhood, we're the problem. And I say we collectively. But I just wanted to say that on behalf of the police department, on Mike, Oval Office, Access. I think everyone has really done their best, especially with the police department. They've done everything they can do. They have done nothing to us. They haven't put any extra pressure on us. They basically said, here's what you're going to do. If you don't do it, maybe we would have been here at this meeting having the same discussion. So, thank you.
Thanks for being here. Question, sir? Alder Starr?
Thank you for coming in. And I know you were talking about bar owners and whatever, trying to get along and all that, but have you had any issues at all with Dual Sports Bar?
No, I know that just people cross the street quite often. They go, it's literally kitty corner to us. So they'll come from us, they'll walk from Cock and Bull, they'll come to us, they'll go to Dual, they'll go to Access, they'll go to Oval Office. I mean, they bar hop. It's a hot zone now. It used to be Washington Street, now it's Main Street. So as far as having problems, no, their staff, there are a lot of nice girls there. They come in and they frequent our establishment. They're good people. Okay. Sometimes it's difficult to, what is your identity? The nightclub closed, they had nowhere to go. People come and they want to dance and they want to have drinks. They kind of flooded into our part of the neighborhood.
Okay, that's all. Thank you.
Any others? Alder Stevens?
I just want to make a comment. I didn't catch your name at the beginning, but.
My name is Kaveh Barakshan.
Okay, thank you for coming. So,
thank you.
We understand you own the Crown, and we understand that the police department had spoke to you previously about issues that were happening there. So I just want to take a moment and say thank you for working with our police department, and I understand you're doing fairly well now, so.
Thank you.
Yep, you're welcome. Thank you.
All right, thank you, sir. Other members of the public?
Good evening. My name is Nick Lins. My business address is 200 South Washington Street in Green Bay, Wisconsin. I represent Greater Source LLC, and they're the owner of 1114 Main Street and the landlord to Dual Sports Bar. So why are we here tonight? Besides the fact that Mr. Kane takes really every opportunity he has to point the finger at my clients and their other business, despite their very good relationship with the police department. He made some comments at the last council meeting that my client simply just wants to get out of an undermarket lease or to get rid of competition. And those things really couldn't be further from the truth. The rent that was set for Dual Sports may be considered under market. However, it was because it was a contemplation of a build-out for an empty building. It wasn't a mistake on my client's part that he's trying to get out of. We knew that Dual Sports Bar was going to have to put money into this place to get the business going. So we sent rent lower to allow him to do it. It's a common practice in commercial real estate. And when Mr. Kane asked for your sympathy due to the fact that he had to put all this money into the building, keep in mind that he was charged lower rents, which he really didn't even pay, but he was charged lower rents to offset the cost of these improvements. And we also question the amount he's put in, but nonetheless, he was charged lower rents to offset this. He also said that my client wants to get rid of the competition. I think he made a comment that the beer is colder and their employees are better looking. I know my client's other employees disagree with him on that one, but the fact is that these are not competitors. They offer different things to their customers, and my client's business or other business would actually benefit from having more people in the area, provided that those customers are not breaking the law and causing damage to the property. And that brings us to the real reason why we're here. My client supports the recommendation of law enforcement and the Protection and Policy Committee not to renew this license. This business attracts a crowd that doesn't follow the law and causes property damage, and the business owners do nothing to help the situation. As an example, my client put up a fence a few months ago to separate the parking lot from others, and twice it has been damaged already. My clients received several letters from the city related to the numerous police calls to Dual Sports Bar, advising my client that if the property is declared a chronic nuisance, my client could be liable as the owner. We brought these letters to Dual Sports' attention at a court hearing last January, so they can't say they're not aware of them. And we take them seriously. We don't want that liability. Dual Sports Bar is not a good neighbor, and it's made the entire area worse for everybody. And this is why we had a neighbor come into the last council meeting to speak out against Dual Sports. It's why the landlord doesn't want Dual Sports to continue to operate, even though it's against their financial interest, meaning that if they have their license taken away, they're not going to be able to make money and they're not going to pay all the past due rent that's owed. Nonetheless, we don't want them to have a license. And as I hope you'll hear later on, or if you heard or read in the agenda packet, or if you saw the Protection Policy meeting, the police department has done a lot of work to illustrate how it's had to devote such an inordinate amount of resources to this business. I also want to point out, and I think it's telling, that the Tavern League is not here in support of Dual Sports Bar, in support of one of its members that's threatened to have its license taken away. They're not here in support of them. I also think it's telling, as was pointed out by Alder before, that their license holder is not here. He's not a fixture in their business. He's not running their business. Their filings in their bankruptcy case mention that he's a 2% owner of the business. He's a straw man, and I think that on an issue as important to their business as this, you'd expect their license holder and the person to be here in person. At the last meeting that we were at, one of the alders asked what types of things the council can consider in making its decision. And one thing I did want to point out is by way of example. I know I'm an attorney here, so bear with me a little bit, but I think it will provide some guidance here. In reviewing the state's case law, I found this decision that the Common Council of Kenosha went through in denying the renewal of a license for a business known as the Alibi Tavern. And there was a lot of similarities there. Just like in this case, there was an issue with disturbances in the area. Just like in this case, the owner was appealing to the council to consider how much money he invested in the business. And just like in this case, the owner was arguing that the disturbances mainly took place outside of his walls and were therefore out of his control. Well, the Common Council decided to not renew the license, and the court upheld that. And the court found that it is appropriate for the council to consider things that happen outside the walls if there's a reason to believe that they're still the cause of it or not taking appropriate efforts to prevent it. They said that the Alibi Tavern has created undesirable neighborhood problems either because of its management or its location. This really rings true of Dual Sports. The court also found that it's appropriate for the council to take into account the financial responsibility of the business, and that is a big issue here. It's undeniable that Dual Sports is in bankruptcy right now. Its landlord, my client, is owed just shy of $120,000 in unpaid rents and other amounts due under the lease. The state of Wisconsin has filed 2 claims in the bankruptcy, one for $63,826 and another one for $17,640. So now we have an amount due to the state of $81,467 that's due to the state. This business simply does not handle its responsibilities, financial or otherwise. So there's plenty of reasons to support the Protection and Policy Committee's recommendation to deny renewal of this license. And I think the most important one is coming from law enforcement. We support them, and we ask that the council does as well. For those of you who are not at the last Protection and Policy meeting, the police department set forth numerous reasons for its recommendation, and instead of offering ways to work with law enforcement, Mr. Kane chose to threaten litigation, to accuse Lieutenant Mahoney of human rights violations and to allege that this is just a personal attack against Dual Sports. There's no attempt to accept responsibility. We heard some of that today, but it's a little bit of too little, too late. This isn't a personal attack, and the police department's numbers back up their recommendation. They spent a lot of time looking into this. They erred on the side of cutting out and not including things that were questionable, and they can confirm where these calls were coming from. Dual Sports just wants to point fingers at everybody. So Mr. Kane is going to say whatever he can to sway your opinion. He's got reason to do so. But we ask that you don't listen to his false promises, his blame shifting, his minimization of real problems and his excuses. This may be a harsh outcome, but it is necessary. We ask you to follow the recommendation of your own committee and of law enforcement and deny the application of renewal of this license.
Thanks for your testimony, sir. Any questions for Mr. Lenz? None. Thank you. Any other guests?
My name is Raymond Henry. Address is 643 Welland Street. I know most of you or some of you I've worked with the police department before. It's not the first time. But I feel that was very harsh, but I think Dual Sports Bar is a very great business because I've worked there since they opened. I was one of the first original bouncers that was there, and I'm still there. So, I mean, if that doesn't tell you guys anything, then I'm not really good at this speech thing. But I think Mike Kane is a very great boss, despite all the other irrelevant things that have happened. I personally worked with the police department, like physically down in front of duels and whatever at Crowns and Commons. Not the first time. I've been to multiple bars. I helped them out even whenever they need. I've helped Cave out. I've been around pretty much. So I was just wanted to say that I think Dual Sports Bar should continue to be open where they're pretty much. So
Thanks for your testimony. Question from Alder Brunette, then Alder Eck.
Thank you. Sir, you spoke just fine, by the way. No worries there. Regarding your employment for the last 2 years, one of the issues that came up was another person was an independent contractor. Are you comfortable stating whether or not you're an employee or an independent contractor of Dual Sports?
Was he?
Well, the other gentleman that we're talking about who committed or allegedly committed an assault.
He was an independent contractor, and it was kind of it wasn't necessarily Mike's fault. It was.
But I don't. Yeah.
I know, but
no, I mean like for you though. I'm just trying to compare the two. Like that person was an independent contractor, but again, specific to you. Are you an independent contractor?
No,
or are you an employee?
I'm original.
Okay. So you're an
original
employee
there, yes.
on the payroll, but the other person was an independent
Correct.
contractor. Okay. All right,
Because we were falling short on security at the time, so we reached out to independent contractors for help until we got back up on our feet with more security.
Yeah, and I didn't mean to cut you off there. I want to protect, in case you have to testify, or I didn't want you to say too much publicly that might be regrettable. So thank you.
Alder Eck and then Alder Grant.
My question, I believe was, so you've been there for 2 years?
Yes.
Okay, that's all.
Okay, Alder Grant.
And you said you do work at multiple bars?
Correct.
Is there anything that those bars do differently than Dual that show, you know, I guess that does better with security or things that Mr. Kane could be implementing?
Honestly, I've worked downtown. I've worked on Washington Street, Broadway. I've worked over on Main Street. I've worked rallies, private security. I've worked private security for big time people that come in town, events and stuff. I think, honestly, there was just one mistake, and we know now it'll never happen again.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Alder. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Any other folks who would like to testify? Seeing none? we don't entertain multiple times at the podium. So entertain a motion to close the floor.
Close the floor.
Motion made by Alder Scannell, seconded by Alder Stevens. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. The floor is closed. We do not have a motion yet on this item. Motion has been made to non-renew the license in this instance. That was made by Alder Galvin, seconded by Alder Stevens. Comments on that motion? Alder Stoyer?
Maybe Alder Galvin could help on that. You mentioned, Alder, that it's $55 for one officer to make at what, years ago?
That was years ago. It was $55 an hour for each officer. Each one of these calls there is going to require at the minimum 2 officers.
So it'd be $110.
$110. You're looking at, if it was 1 hour for each call, and I'm telling you, sexual assault's not 1 hour. And a lot of these other calls are not going to be 1 hour. Someone gets pistol whipped, shots fired, things like that. You're looking easily at $12,000
That's what I kind of figured,
in police services, at minimum,
just for that one place.
just for that one place. And when you look at the amount of times officers are pulled away from doing their work in other sections of the city, we have complaints from neighbors about crimes and things taking place, and we never see an officer out there. That's because they're tied up at places like this. And I've seen this before, and, you know, they've always got a hard luck story. You know, I'm sorry, it'll never happen again, but I think 112 times is quite a few times too many in 1 year. And for a business owner, any business owner in any kind of business that would have these kind of problems, not to be aware of it, not to be taking corrective action. I understand about calling, you know, we encourage them to call, but when you're over-serving people or you're not controlling your business and your customers are getting out of control and causing these kind of problems, that's your responsibility also. It just doesn't absolve you to over-serve people and then just call the cops to take care of the problem.
Okay, thanks for that. I was speaking.
Anything else, Alder Stoyer?
No, that's just concerning, you know, and I'd like to ask Lieutenant Allen or Lieutenant Mahoney about that as well, as far as what it might cost, or Commander Warwick, what it costs roughly for an officer to, you know, per hour to come to a situation like that.
If you're including fringe benefits, and I'm basing this off, if we're an entity or an organization would hire an officer off duty, it's between $75 and $85 an hour with fringe benefits. So that would be considerably less if you're considering, if you're calculating the officer, that's at time and a half. So it's probably $60 to $70 an hour now, if you're talking about the officer on duty.
So that's $140 for 2 officers, 111 incidents. I don't know, I can do the math, I suppose. It's, give me a second, 15,540. So, that's all, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Alder Brunette?
Yeah, I do have a quick question, perhaps Lieutenant Allen, Commander Warwick, Chief Davis, if he's on the line. This idea, and I understand why the police would say this, that if there's an issue at your bar, if there's a patron that's being unruly, if there's something going on, call the police. I understand why we would recommend people do that, bar owners do that. I worked in banking for a number of years, and just a parallel that I remember having a training, and there's a police officer from the municipality of Ashwaubenon that told the bank manager and other tellers and whatnot, if you see any suspicious activity at your branch, pull the money, you know, the false alarm, and we'll send an officer. We'd rather you take that risk than, but the problem is that costs money. The agencies then charge the employee. So in this situation, could you comment on, is there kind of inherently built in this weird double standard where we're asking bars to reach out to us, and when they do, then it hurts them? Can you just comment on that?
Sure. I think, and that's a common question that we get in situations like this. And the issue in this case, or any other where we're going to make a recommendation like this, is not that someone called. The problem comes when the calls are repeated and they're related to a pattern and practice at a business that isn't getting better. So, we're never going to hold it against a licensed establishment just that they call the police when there's a problem and that they call us every time there's a problem. But when the cause of that problem is something in their business practices that never gets fixed, that's when we're going to get to a place like this. And so, but we're never, just the simple fact that a licensed seller of alcohol calls the police some number of times or another is not enough to get us here. It's that pattern and practice over time on the part of that business that creates a risk to the public that isn't being addressed.
Okay, thank you, Chief. No other questions, Mayor.
Thanks, Alder. Alder Eck?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Oh, are we on? Okay. So it's a question for one of the officers. Mr. Kane said that they've had improvements since our last meeting, and I wondered if you could collaborate that, if you've seen improvements in like less police calls, things like that, maybe even improvement in communications.
I have my partner pulling up the calls, but yes, I reviewed the calls this afternoon before we came in. There was 2 disturbance calls. One, Mike is right, the female was not allowed into the establishment for an Illinois ID that looked fake, and she created her own disturbance, so then they called, or she called on herself. The other disturbance, the girl called on herself. The other disturbance did generate a report. And it was a male that was assaulting a bouncer at the bar, arrested for DC resisting, and there was a actual paper report on that. But yes, to collaborate Mike's story from 4/26 to today, yeah, the calls have they've gone down. We have 2 disturbances. 2 of these calls I had to go through. They're coded as ordinance. They were coded wrongly. They should be crime preventions. We can fix that, but that's why I go through these calls, read the CAD notes, so I can weed out what's not real or what's not coded correctly to count against them. 2 of these where we deployed our a new camera system, the Lot Cop or Eagle Eye, as some of you may know it. A suspicious vehicle with an underage girl in the back, waiting for a fake ID to get in. She never made it to the bar. Officers found her and her friend sitting in the car with an open intox. A couple crime prevention calls from our night shift where they're just trying to be proactive. It may be a slower night. They're trying to be proactive because of the history of the disturbances there. And then one theft call that did generate a report. There's a bag and a phone. I don't know if that's the same one Mike was talking about, that it was recovered behind the bar later. I'm not sure if that's the same one. They're nodding yes, so. Then the sexual assault that we've talked about tonight. And another crime prevention from officers just going in the parking lot to be proactive, to prevent, just be visible and prevent anything that would occur in the parking lot due to the history.
Okay, so based on that, is there anything you'd change in your recommendation?
The denial? No, I wouldn't change, not denying.
Thank you.
Thank you, Alder Galvin, then Alder Grant.
I'd like to point out, out of 112 calls for service, they called us only 24 times. 88 times they didn't call us. Things have been cleaned up for 2 weeks because we took a $40,000 piece of our city equipment and put it in their parking lot. It's cameras. It's a system that's supposed to help deter crime. So again, we're spending taxpayer resources to help an individual run his private business. Do we leave that there for a whole year? I mean, what do? 88 times they didn't call. They didn't call about the sexual assault. They didn't call about the 2 weapons calls, pistol whipping, shot fired. They didn't call about a lot of stuff. If it was my business and I'm running a bar business, I would think that I would be there all the time and I'd be calling every time and doing everything I can to mitigate even having to call by watching how much I'm serving my patrons, by watching how many people I have in the bar, by making sure I'm not hiring independent contractors. I mean, that's my business. If I'm running a drugstore, a taxi cab, any kind of business, you do your due diligence. Look at the people throughout this community that run good bars. They're not costing us all of this trouble. And I think this is too little, too late, to give this person approval to extend his license for another year. Because once we give it to him for another year, he's got it for another year. Taking it away is extremely difficult. Thank you.
Thanks, Alder. Alder Grant?
And I know this might be tough to answer, thank you, Mayor, sorry. For the police department, I know they opened in 2019, and then obviously COVID hit, so it's a little tough. When would you say the number of calls really increased?
For the denial, and we could only go back for the last year, so we're only counting the last year. I can run the total, but then I'm not giving you accurate data for the whole time they've been open, because there's gonna be calls in there that do not relate to their business.
Okay. Do you feel Mr. Kane could have taken action sooner to prevent some of this as far as implementing rules, reaching out to you guys for recommendations?
When, in that original meeting that they referred to, Kaveh and Mike, we did make some of those recommendations at that time. So in the last month, you know, now we're gonna take action on those items.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Alder. All right, I don't have anyone else in the queue. We have a motion and a second to non-renew. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. The ayes have it, and we are on to our next item, item 13. We have a motion there. Item 13, entertain a motion or comment. Alder Steuer?
All right, I met with Clerk Jeffries last week for over about an hour. Had a very good conversation with her about the communication I brought forward. There was a few ideas that I brought forward that she liked and would like to try to incorporate, so I thought I would just go through this quickly. Some of it has to do with IT, with our website. And it's not just the clerk's office that might have had some issues with it, but there's other departments as well. But for this, I talked about having a voter button on the main web page, which would direct voters to the clerk's web page. Right now, we don't have that. I was kind of looking at this as a 20-year-old, a 50-year-old, or an 80-year-old, you know, going to our website. Can they navigate it? The 20-year-old probably very well. 80-year-old, not so much, maybe 50, kind of like me, back and forth, who knows? So that's part of it. Second thing would be to have a polling location map with an overlay of all their districts in varying colors. I like maps, along with the ward lines and polling locations. Another thing would be to have a possible interactive polling location map when webpage visitors hover over the polling place location, and they're going to try to work on that with IT. They would see a photo and address of the polling places being sought, and that's something that has to be looked at. This won't be ready by the August election, but it would be ready by November. If this isn't feasible, a picture of each polling place will be provided. So I think that's important as well, because polling places have changed, and you know, there's folks that are always asking, where do I vote? Like I said, these will be completed by summer's end in time for the November 2022 election. Clerk Jeffries also mentioned that If voters do not have computer access, they should read their uniform instructions, which are inserted with the absentee ballot/ballot certificate, and also to pay attention to the newspapers, both the Press Gazette and Press Times, for inserts which provide ample pertinent information about voting. So, as far as my comfort with that, I was appreciative of the time with Clerk Jeffries. We had a good spirited conversation. I was satisfied with the answers I got, and I know there might be some other alders that have some questions as well, but I was satisfied with the information I got. So that's all I have for now.
Thanks, Alder Burnett.
Yeah, thank you for that explanation, Alderman Stoyer. I know we had talked earlier today, and for the sake of the council, I think the spirit of the original communication to the Protection and Policy Committee, respectfully, I think is a little lost in that it's good that you've had a meeting with the city clerk, but I think what the original intent, and I'm not trying to read your mind when you submitted this, but it was to have the clerk's office do a presentation for the public and the city council. Just like earlier today, we had that presentation from the gun violence group that came to us with something that the public can say. Now, 2 years ago, when we had the partisan election in November 2020, we had an ad hoc committee, so there were some of those processes that were open to the public for the most part, at least that part. So I guess with this communication, it would be nice, in my opinion, I'm not speaking to you specifically now, but it would be nice to have that presentation for the sake of the public. People to say, hey, what's going on with the election? Are there enough poll workers? Are there enough locations? Blah, blah, blah. Oh, watch this meeting in October. Now, we don't have to rush and do it for August, because let's be real, it's a primary in August. It's Republican running against Republican, Democrat running against Democrat. But the partisan election, the Democrat versus Republican and all the other parties, there are a lot of really contentious races. And I think if we can, as a council, just have the clerk present to this council, we can point the public, say, attend this meeting, watch this meeting on YouTube, we'll walk through the process. That's at least what I was hoping when you presented. And I don't, it's awkward, I don't mean to talk to you through the meeting, it's just, that's my
Answer to that. I think when I first made that communication, that was kind of the intent I had. I think that, it says what it says, and it's been a little contentious over the last couple of years. I was looking for information, just so that people can navigate, and they want to vote. We have a lot of information on the website, but a lot of it is like, well, you got to pick here, you got to go pull this down, and, you may miss some things. And there are some people that aren't computer savvy, so, maybe, I'm fine with that. I brought this forward mainly to have a discussion, if other alders want to, chime in on that. I mean, you chimed in, Alder Burnett, and I appreciate that. For me, it would be great too, if you had something, some kind of a presentation where it could be 10 minutes, just kind of going through it and just informational. I'd be fine with that, so.
All right, we're looking for a motion here. Alder Eck.
Well, I just want to clarify, when I see to receive and place on file, seems like it's being, put away and never to be seen again. And I think it was a fair request, and I guess I like what Alder Burnett was suggesting. Is there a reason why it's on to receive and place on file? Who did that?
Committee.
Oh, the committee?
Alder
Okay.
Stevens?
So Alder Stoyer did put this communication in, but at Protection and Policy, his thought process changed. He was looking more towards our website for clarification and possible upgrades into sectors where the general public could get information easier, which I would agree. That's why also at the end of this communication, we ask all the alders if they have questions or ideas regarding the election process to please reach out to the clerk's office. They will gladly walk all the alders and the general public through the process. So that's why this is being received and placed in file, because at Protection and Policy, the thought process changed from Alder Stoyer from what he has written down to he wants more website design, better navigation through all of it. And as alders, if we have questions, we don't need the body of the common council to make direction to the clerk's office when the clerk's office is open for suggestions by individual alders. And
Okay.
it's faster and easier to make changes instead of waiting for the body of common council to make changes.
Okay, and I will agree. I thought it changed as well when I listened in on the Policy and Protection
Correct.
Committee.
Thank you.
Thank you for clarification.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Thanks, Alder. Any further comments? Still need a motion here. Alder Brunette.
Yeah, I would like, respectfully, Mr. Stoyer, I'd like to make a motion to request that the clerk's office present information on the city councils, or the election in August, and then plans for the November election at the first meeting in September 2022.
So,
that
Clerk
make
Jeffrey?
sense?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Clerk Jeffries?
Yes, thank you, Your Honor. I have a family engagement at the end of August, beginning of September, so that would not be possible for me.
Alder Brunette?
Yeah, what's the meeting schedule in September? Do we have two? We have two.
Yeah.
So I would just say a meeting in September and not be as urgent.
that schedule?
Yeah.
Sure. Just one moment.
Let me just look at the schedule.
Sure.
And just to clarify the, the motion, you're looking for a presentation that's one sort of retrospective on the August election, and then,
Yeah, I can explain when she gets the date.
November 20th? I have the 20th.
The 20th, September 20th. So, and then we're doing open book.
Okay.
Too. So, for the revaluation, that's where it's starting.
You want to just state that in the?
So I'm having some difficulty understanding a couple of things. So the August election, even though you may see it as something that's not large, it's a federal election and a state election, so that requires a lot of work. In addition to the fact that we'll have 11 split wards, so there's a number of mailings that we have to send, and people have to understand, we have to get our chief inspectors to understand how to balance their original wards with their split wards. Then in September, October, we have our Board of Review on October 19th and 20th, and I'm not sure if you understand that there's a revaluation of the city. So essentially, 3-4 weeks before Board of Review, there's a thing called open book, where lots of people who are concerned about their revaluations contact myself as the person who runs Board of Review, as well as the assessor's office. Well, I'm saying all of that I'm not sure when this presentation can take place. If you would be very, very specific, so I could answer specific questions, then I could see it potentially taking place not in September. Just look. Absentee ballots go out in September as well. Yeah, I'm looking. Thank you. So it seems like the best time to do that would be October 4th.
Alder?
Yeah, I mean, I'm just thinking on the fly here. I had really no intent to create a motion, so the reason I said, I agree, the August election is still important. I'm just stating that the contentious election that typically is the November election, there are a lot of things that were done that some people in the public didn't care the city did. So what I was getting at, the main purpose is for members of the public to be able to attend a meeting. As council members, we can ask questions of the clerk prior to the election. So unless other members of the council have any differing opinion, I'm fine with that first meeting in October for the presentation. And Clerk Jeffries, you don't have to prepare an hour-long presentation, but, you know, a nice bullet point, 10-minute presentation for the sake of.
Excuse me, Alder, I'm not sure how to do that on an election, which is very technical. So I think that what you would need to do is to gather up some questions from council so that I can answer them. Maybe some parameters.
Well, what I'd like to do is just refer this to the, I'll change the motion if you don't mind to refer back to the committee. We can discuss it there.
Motion has been made. Do we need to withdraw?
Motion to withdraw my, I don't know the technicalities.
No one seconded it, so
I think we already did. Is it motion to withdraw? Is that what we're doing? Okay. Yeah.
Motion to withdraw.
Motion to withdraw made by Alder Brunette, seconded by Alder Campbell. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. That motion has been withdrawn. Alder Brunette.
Motion to refer back to protection policy.
Motion has been made to refer this item back to the Protection and Policy Committee. That was made by Alder Brunette and seconded by Alder Eck. Discussion on that item, or that motion rather. Seeing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. That has been returned to the committee. On to N, report of the Protection and Policy Committee granting operator licenses. Motion to approve made by Alder Johnson, seconded by Alder Campbell. Any items or any names to be held or voted on separately, or any abstentions? Seeing none, all in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, nay.
Mayor, just give me a moment.
The ayes have it. We are on to the Finance Committee. Motion to approve made by Alder Scannell, seconded by Alder Galvin. Any items here to be handled separately?
7 and 8.
And 9.
7, 8, 9. Any others? Seeing none, all in favor of the remainder of that report, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. The report has been approved with the exception of items 7, 8, and 9. On item 7, motion to approve made by Alder Scannell, seconded by Alder Galvin, and that was pulled by
Me.
Alder Johnson. You have the floor.
Thank you, Mayor. You know, I had some questions around this particular item at Finance Committee meeting, and I ultimately supported it, but after reflection, I really would prefer to refer this back. Essentially, what we're looking at is a $148,000 allocation through ARPA, but we've also bonded $100,000 for this that we do have in an account right now. So we're really looking at a fence to be installed here at a cost of about $250,000. For those who are newer who may not know, we do have an ad hoc facilities committee that was formed to talk about a plan for a number of facilities throughout the city, including the police department. And so I'm very hesitant for us to spend $250,000 to install something when there is a plan in place to talk about a long-term strategy around this. I think we're all concerned about the safety of our police officers. That is not at all what this is about. This is about being fiscally prudent with the dollars that we have. And I personally would favor us giving the Ad hoc Facilities Committee an opportunity to reconvene after the report that is expected back soon, I believe, to talk about what some of our next steps are. Because I think at the end of the day, to me, it's about getting the best scenario possible in the most expedient way possible. And if we could conceivably come up with a strategy out of that Ad hoc Facilities Committee that says, you know what, we could apply this $250,000 towards that project, I just think that's a better long-term investment for taxpayers. And of course, totally open to talking about what other temporary solutions might be appropriate to help provide the safeguards that we need for our police department. But I do think that we ought to give that facilities committee an opportunity to do some of their work. So again, I'm not looking to, did I make the motion? I don't know. To refer it back? Yeah. So I'm not looking to deny it.
Yeah, but-
Right? This is referral.
Just a question, is this a referral to the ad hoc facilities committee, or are you referring back to?
Yeah, maybe a more appropriate motion on this one would actually be to hold until the ad hoc facilities committee reconvenes.
I think, do we need a date certain though? We do need a date certain, so that's the issue with that motion.
Do we have any perspective from staff on when that report might be complete to reconvene that committee?
From today? Okay.
Okay, so why don't we hold it for 2 months, and if it ends up on this agenda and we need to address it at that time, I would do that. And of course, that's all contingent on the vote here. So today is June 7th, so if we brought it, when is our meeting scheduled in August?
Second meeting in August?
August 2nd.
Second meeting?
Council meeting?
Second meeting in August?
Second meeting was the end of August, yeah.
Mm-hmm. 30th, maybe? August 30th, I think.
Okay, so that would be my motion to hold until August 30th.
Okay. Alder Johnson makes a motion to hold this item until the August 30 meeting of the Common Council. That was seconded by Alder Eck. I would go to Chief Davis just to respond to this, if you have any thoughts.
Yeah, just to be clear, the consequences of holding this off that long will mean that we will not be able to complete this fence project this year, which was our goal, because we can't build a fence once things start to freeze up around here, I am told. This is a significant safety issue that I noticed when I first got here last September. This is obviously, the safety of police officers is obviously an issue that I have some experience with over the years. And I consider this a pretty serious safety issue for our employees. We tried to work with DPW to design this in a way that anticipated future development potentially on that same site. But, in the end, we went forward with this proposal, and I stick with this proposal really because it's a fairly serious issue that, I realize there's a lot of energy around new facilities for police, and I certainly support that and appreciate it very much. But that future is so uncertain, and this need is so glaring and real that's why we recommended moving forward with this particular project, understanding all of the larger questions, of course, that the council has around the highest and best uses of ARPA money and the future of facilities. But not having secured parking for a police facility can, and I have seen it because I come from a place that doesn't have secured parking for all of its police facilities, and we are at risk of some really big issues.
Okay. Thanks for those comments, Chief. Alder Galvin and then Alder Hutchison.
Thank you, Your Honor. And I'm just going to repeat what I said at the finance meeting. We've had squad cars burned in the parking lot. We've had groups, crews, gangs observe police operations and report on them when they were about to execute search warrants, which stymied our search warrants from being successful. We've had prisoners escape from the police station and make it out of the parking lot. We've had assaults in the parking lot. We've had damage done to personal vehicles. We've had people make it into the police station through the garage and service doors that for some reason or other weren't secured when they should have been. We've had individuals wandering around found inside the police station. When you think of the harm that could be done if someone were to damage evidence or destroy that evidence for criminal cases or harm officers, I understand Alder Johnson's desire to see if this is money well spent, but I think the chief said that looking at a new police department would be between, I think he said 75 million. I was on a committee that last looked at it, it was 50 million. I don't see that happening in our future, not while I still have hair on my head yet, so, I just don't see it. And this has been long overdue. It's been a recommendation from chief to chief to chief. For whatever reason, council has always decided that it just wasn't worth it for whatever reason. But I think at the end of the day, even in 2 months, I think the recommendation is going to be that the fence go up, and then we're going to be stuck waiting till next year to put it up. Thank you.
Thanks, Alder. Alder Hutchison, then Alder Stoyer.
Thank you. My personal experience when I met the chief for the very first time, I drove my great big van over there because that's the vehicle I use when my wife has the car, and I accidentally drove through the parking lot because I didn't know where I was going, and I realized in the middle of it, I'm in the middle of the police parking lot. So I got out and parked on the street, and that's just me accidentally doing it. If I wanted to do intent, it's just so easy. There should be no reason we delay this. I understand the business sense of that, but I see no reason delaying this action. $148,000 out of these funds to add up to $250,000 to put this fence in around the police department. It's absolutely called for, and it's called for now. And this is how we support our local police officers. This is a concrete way to do it. Not to wait until maybe an ad hoc will vote on it and get it going. I appreciate that, but the funds are here now, and they're not that much of the funds that we have. So I would strongly recommend a vote to do this. Thank you.
Thanks, Alder. Alder Stoyer.
Elder Galvin kind of answered it somewhat. I think part of the thought process is that if we spend $250,000 for a fence, there's going to come a time where we'll eventually get a new station or a new center for police and fire, possibly, and that could take 5 years, 10 years, who knows? So, looking at the financial end of it, it's significant, but just listening to the stories, and I don't know, Alder Galvin brought up a number of items or things that have happened over time. It'd be kind of interesting to see what kind of cost that was to the city. I don't know if there's any way to do that, but you could have a ballpark, but it sounds like it's pretty extensive. So I'm leaning toward the fence, so, thank you.
Thanks, Alder. Alder Eck.
So I want to clarify that it, it says 148,100 and you're saying $250,000. So this is added to the bonded amount? Okay. All right. And then also, and I don't see in the report, maybe I missed it, I don't know, about all the burned cars and things like that, because I don't remember reading about that specifically.
That goes back over the years.
Okay, all right.
We could pull up reports of officers that were assaulted, how many people escaped, how many times there was vandalism or damage done. I mean, but, this is what could have prevented had they put that fence up in the very beginning when the department was built. But it was a cost-saving thing at the time.
Yeah, I just think that would be good to add in the report for, if you want to consider everything, that would be helpful.
Thanks, Alder. Any other comments on this motion? So we do have a motion on the floor to hold this item until that second meeting in August. All in favor will signify. We can use the board, as always.
You may vote. Campbell and Mizek.
Let's see if it disappears.
Zach, how would you like to be recorded?
So I'm just clarifying, so if I vote holding it for 2 months or?
Yep.
Okay. Organize the whole. Oh.
How would you like to be recorded?
And it is,
Give me a second.
yeah, I know.
Let me click
It
fast.
appears to be 10 to 2,
Yes. Let's see if it works. Disappearing.
and it is 10 to
Okay.
2, and then in the negative, so that motion fails. Alder Johnson?
Thank you, Mayor. Obviously, I'm okay with the wishes of the council. The one thing I would ask, I believe the design on this was an 8-foot fence with slats. That is a really unwelcoming design and style for a structure that is in the heart of your downtown. I would just ask if staff would maybe take a look at some alternative options. I don't need an answer on that today. It's not something I'm looking for council to drive, but you know, I just don't see that as being the type of product that would ever be usable in a brand-new facility, so it's this facility and then done. But, I mean, that is an awfully large fence that is quite frankly unappealing. So just, again, just requesting staff to consider what some other options might be on that to provide the safety metrics that we need. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Alder. So looking for a motion. Motion to approve made by Alder Scannell, seconded by Alder Campbell. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. We are on to item 8. Motion to approve made by Alder Scannell, seconded by Alder Hutchison. This item was pulled by Alder Johnson.
Thank you, Mayor. I voted against this at committee, and I just wanted to clarify, and it's not because I'm against this idea. In fact, I even said at the end of the meeting, it was, my opposition was about procedural, and I actually, in preference, or in favor, I should say, of the discussion that we had, which was to have staff come back at the June Finance Committee meeting and present their top 5 to 10 proposals for each of the allocated categories, and additionally revisiting that dialogue again in July. And the intent was for that process was to give alders a little bit more time and opportunity to meet with staff and present their ideas as well, because those ideas obviously might not be part of that June discussion just yet. And so, so it was my preference again to have this item referred back to staff and have staff present it at that Finance Committee meeting. And as I said at that meeting, I actually think that this is going to be an idea that does rise to the top of favored projects. But in favor of that holistic process, I'm going to make a motion that we refer this back to staff with the expectation that they present it as part of their proposals at that June Finance meeting.
Second. Motion has been made to refer this item back to the Finance Committee. That was made by Alder Johnson, seconded by Alder Brunette. Discussion on that. Clerk Jeffries?
Yes, thank you, Your Honor. I just wanted to note that there were 3 people who sent comment forms to us, all in favor of this item. That would be Ms. Natalie Baumstead from 239 Seminole, Peter Fluke from 1144 Hawthorne, and Representative Christina Shelton from 1045 South Webster. I thought that Representative Shelton wanted to speak, but I don't see her here. I'm not sure if she's in Zoom.
Okay. Does anyone on Zoom or in the room here want to testify on this? Just to clarify? Okay. Thank you. Motion on the floor made by Alder Scannell, seconded by Alder Stoyer. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. The floor is open.
Hi, Polly Razor, 419 East Captain Circle, Green Bay. I did watch the Finance Committee meeting when you did speak about this, and I guess I just wanted to make the point as a citizen that I understand it was going to go potentially in the Green Bay Public Schools referendum, and the Oneida Tribe was looking at also putting funds in, so it seems early to vote on it as a council. I think it's already getting late in the year that it would ever be done this year. So to wait for referendum and other financing seems to be prudent. That's my only comment. So, thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Any questions? No. Motion to close the floor.
Motion to close the floor.
Motion to close the floor made by Alder Scannell, seconded by Alder Stevens. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. The floor is closed. So we do have that motion that was made by Alder Johnson, seconded by Alder Brunette, to refer back to the Finance Committee, Alder Galvin, and then Alder Grant.
Thank you, Your Honor. This is for Director Grenier. If this is approved tonight, would we be able to get any of these apparatuses up and working before the school year starts?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. And all of you have letters here from the Green Bay school system saying that if the referendum does pass, they would pick up the brunt of the cost for $1.3 million, and that they would expect the city to pick up the other $300,000. This is a project that has been waiting, languishing since 2019 when it was approved by the city council. We've done almost nothing to generate any funds for this. As you know, that the amount of bicycle and pedestrian accidents have been increasing in this community, despite the police department's enforcement actions. We've had several children that were hit, one in my district at Aldo Leopold, and in the past years since even before I was elected, there have been other incidents with children going to school, having near misses or being struck by vehicles. This is something that affects everybody in this community. This is not just one district or one school that's benefiting from it. It's many schools and many different neighborhoods throughout the city. This will not just affect the school children in the schools, but affect our pedestrians and citizens, bicyclists, all year round. To me, this is a win-win situation. I think that even if the school referendum doesn't pass, this would be money well spent. I think to wait means, again, it's another year until we can get it in place. I understand the desire to wait and have a bucket full of things to pick from, and even comments from those who want to wait think this one would rise to the top. And because of that, I don't see any reason to wait when waiting again puts our residents at risk for another year while we wait for the weather to change so these items can be installed. Thank you.
Thanks, Alder Galvin, or Grant, rather.
Thank you, Mayor. I don't know, I apologize, Mr. Green, if this is a question for you or not, but has anyone reached out to the county or the Oneida Nation requesting funds?
Director Grenier?
It's my understanding in speaking with the traffic engineer this afternoon that yes, we have reached out. The nation has already committed their funds, so they have no funds left to commit to this project. County, on the other hand, when it comes to bike and pedestrian facilities, the relationship with the county, and this is not meant as any criticism of the county, it's simply a delegation of responsibilities. County highways serve as arterials that transmit traffic from one point to the other as quickly and as efficiently as possible. They do not operate as a city street, especially in the city of Green Bay. I can get into a long discussion with you relative to a jurisdictional transfer that happened in 1979, but that's a conversation for another day. What the county does is the county provides an opportunity for the city to put bike and ped facilities on their locations, but they don't participate. It's 100% city cost. That's the way that it's always been through the county, and that's the position they continue to take, which we're fine with. Again, they're interested in moving high volumes of traffic. We're responsible for the pedestrian bikes and kind of the city street function, if you will, within those facilities. So yes, we have reached out. One, it's just not their policy, and the other agency has already committed their funds. They have no funds to commit to it.
Okay, thank you. And if the referendum does not go through, it falls 100% on the city then? If we
Yes.
pass this? Okay. Because I guess my concern is if we pass this, what drives people to vote yes for the referendum? I know there's other things on there, but I worry that if we say yes, there's less of a drive to vote yes for the referendum.
Thanks, Alder. Alder Johnson.
Yep, just two quick questions, Mayor. One is, do we know if we were to pass this tonight and the referendum does pass, is there an agreement in place that would guarantee that the city would be reimbursed that 1.3 million?
I mean, I think it's pretty clear based on the letter that we have and conversations that I've had with the superintendent and with board members that you know, they will be good to their word.
And it's not necessarily about the word, I just didn't know if that was the intent. Or if that 1.3 million would, you know, where it's, hey, we've already bought all the flashing beacons, so now we'll direct that to something else. Stefan had her hand raised, maybe she can answer.
Sure. Ms. Hummel?
Thank you. So as far as that is concerned, the 1.3 would be allocated to this project specifically. So within that letter that you all received, it does spell that out pretty clearly, but it wouldn't be a reimbursement to the city. It would be a reallocation of that 1.3 million then that was already allocated to this project. So we confirmed with finance that we are able to reallocate that money out. So we would spend within our means for that first initial project throughout our bonded budget. And then from there, if the referendum passes, reallocate that money back out through other ARPA projects.
Okay. And then just one other question for staff, and I don't know if this would be for you, Steph, or somebody else, but with this particular proposal, it's my understanding that these intersections are all proposed exclusively for school intersections. Do those reflect our highest risk intersections throughout the city, or was there any discussion or plan to address some of our other intersections?
Sure. Dave might actually be able to answer that a little bit better. These did come right from the recommendations from that Safe Walk and Bike Plan, but they are not all school intersections. There are parts throughout the city that are just high crash rates that we have, different trail crossings that are not protected at this point. I don't know if you wanted to expand on that all, but there is a process to that.
I thought there would be, so a little explanation would just be great.
Yeah, a little bit of an explanation. A number of you council members were here back in 2019 when the Safe Walk and Bike Plan was approved. So I guess the first and foremost thing to think about and to understand is that many of those recommendations in that plan with respect to this rapid flashing beacon and with the driver feedback signs around schools, these are all part of that plan. So we looked at that and said, what can we do and what can we do rather quickly? And to extend on what Stephanie was saying with respect to trails, for example. If we have a trail system and that trail system intersects, crosses with a arterial street and a collector roadway, that would be a location for installation. And then also when it comes down to the schools, when it comes down to the school speed limit 15 signs, we'd be replacing them with an LED blinker sign and then the driver feedback sign, the your speed sign. And this would be applied at all schools. We looked at every school, and I believe only 5 did not make the cut for the simple fact of that they are not on either a collector street or an arterial street. And those are the ones that we have the problems at. I mean, most of the schools where they're just on residential streets, you typically have parents that are parking on both sides of the street, and the speeds really are not as much of an issue. I mean, we may have some of the crossing issues, which obviously would be addressed with the flashing beacon component of the plan, but when it comes down to the speed part, that's why we developed that end of it.
Thank you, Mr. Hanson. Alder?
Yeah, that's great. Thank you.
All right, any other questions or comments? Alder Burnett and then Alder Hutchison.
Yeah, thank you. Director Ellenbecker, do you recall the survey results? I know that certain results were per category, but do you recall anything specific that survey respondents said about traffic, intersections, school safety as being a response? I know I'm asking you on the spot. I apologize.
Yeah, I may not be the right person to ask about survey results. I may have breezed over them, but I can tell you honestly, I didn't look at them very closely, so I
That's
apologize.
fine.
I don't
Mr.
think I can
Hanson
answer
has
that.
it, so,
Yeah,
Mr. Mayor.
Mr. Hanson, go ahead.
Yes, we have a summary of, I'm not actually sure if these are all of them, but I do have 6 of them. I will read them aloud. First one, Green Bay needs to focus on issues that truly impact the everyday life of the citizens, like public safety, public works, and arts and culture. More specifically, pedestrian walkways are sorely needed. Second comment, continue to redevelop downtown and make Green Bay more pedestrian and bike friendly. Third comment, please invest in pedestrian safety and walkability or walkable neighborhoods through more pedestrian controlled flashing lights and highly visible sidewalks such as those near the hospitals. Fourth comment, we need more traffic enforcement and other methods to control speed. Next comment, spend some money on ensuring all schools in the district have crosswalks as good as those at the football stadium and the hospital downtown. In other words, clear markings and flashing lights so our kids are safer. And the last comment, create safer walking paths across busy streets.
There were over 28 comments from the open comment section that were specific to pedestrian accommodations.
Okay. I had another question. And thank you, Ms. Humble, for all your work with this. I know this is kind of a passion of yours, and hoping we can do something to accommodate it for the public. But question, along this process since 2019, I know you've been involved in the school district as well. Like, along that process, has the school district been discussing this funding? This is before ARPA, this is before COVID, but through the last 3 years, have there been any discussions about shared funding of this sort of outcome project?
Certainly. I feel a lot of their decision-making with this plan was prior to COVID. So their shift definitely shifted towards COVID response for the last 2 years. So they're finally coming back to some of these other plans and implementation things that they had on their docket. They are just a piece of the puzzle for our implementation, just as we are a piece of the puzzle. So we're also, we partner with nonprofit organizations, with technical experts to do events, to do programming, to do all those sorts of things. So we did a lot of the low-hanging fruit as far as engineering is concerned, putting in some bike lanes that just needed restriping, that didn't need a full reconstruction of the roadway. A lot of those things are represented in our 2020 and 2021 reports. So now we're at the point where our big projects are things like this, things that need some infrastructure to be placed, and things that maybe need a full road reconstruction. So the school district wouldn't be involved in things like that, but on their end, there's a lot of programming things they can do with their curriculum to make improvements for bike and pedestrian safety. So I think that their focus has been more on programming with their students and the things they can do on site that we would not be involved in. So I think that that's where their concentration has been versus try to fund infrastructure projects that we've been working on.
Okay, thank you. I do have a general comment. I'm very conflicted about this one. I made the motion because I want to see us do something, but one thing that I have been researching is how other municipalities and how other counties, not that we're a county, but how counties have allocated ARPA funds. And I know that there are a list of priorities. We have the survey. I commend the mayor, his staff for doing that. It's a good basis. But for me, it has always been difficult, and I have approved most of the funding allocations of ARPA up until this point. I think I made a motion to hold 3 or 4 of them last time, and then I voted against green infrastructure and the rain barrels. But what some municipalities are doing is they're having a list of the priorities, like this is what we can accomplish. These are the 5 or 10 in each category. Some municipalities have created an ad hoc committee so they could independently score each project to see where it fits in the criteria. And I would say that this one is probably high for me, being a parent of young children, representing a district with multiple schools like you all do as well. And so I think that this is, for me, a priority. I know there are a lot of priorities. I just don't know where it fits in that pecking order. Like, how can we grade this one versus other projects we could invest in that we don't yet know about? So it's tough. It really is. But I made a motion I second the motion, and I'll stand by it. I really hope we can work something out, but it would be good to kind of see everything all on a sheet of paper so we can say, yes, definitively to the members of the public, this is why we're picking this one. This one makes more sense than all the others. That's what I really want to get to. So.
Thanks, Alder. Alder Hutchison?
Thank you. To me, this is a lot simpler, and I understand the reasoning behind what you just said, but you're neglecting the fact this thing has been studied. It has been studied for years, and there has been different communities, there's been different people brought together to look at this, and then there has been a conclusion, there's a design, and it's spread throughout the whole city. There isn't any one place that's going to get a lot of money. It's just spread throughout the whole city. It's going to be a game changer in terms of safety for our children. And I see this right here, right now, and I'm seeing instances where if we don't have this in place, something bad's going to happen, really. And to sit back and say, well, let's combine this with other things and see if it floats to the surface. This thing's on top. This is way on top. I'm trying to think of what we could dream up in the next week or two. What project could we do that has that much input, that has so much good that is going to certain specific places? There's nothing even close. It's not even in the same galaxy. This is all by itself. It's standalone. It should happen as soon as we can again. And I'm not saying that just to get it done, but what it's going to do is make areas around the schools safer. It's going to make general crossings in the city safer. When someone comes to this city, they're going to see these things and go, oh, this city kind of has emphasis on pedestrians. Right now, we don't have that. But if we start now, we will by next year. So I'm highly in favor of getting this thing started right now, again. Thank you.
Thanks, Alder Grant, and then Alder Scannell.
Director Grenier, you mentioned that some of the roads can get done prior to the school year, or crossings, I apologize. Do you know roughly just a percentage that's realistic to get done?
Offhand, I don't, no.
Okay. And then I guess just one other general question for, I'm not sure who can answer this, but we talked about the referendum, but has the school brought up using or allocating any of their ARPA funds towards this?
I did ask if they had additional funding resources, and they said no, so I'm
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
I recall actually that they looked at it and it didn't meet the criteria that they used for ARPA funding, so that they got something back more from our Department of Education or wherever.
Yeah, they have
and
different
said no.
criteria for their money.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Alder Scannell.
I just want to say I don't appreciate Alders walking this back. I know you spoke, but I don't know what you're peddling. And I also agree that this is well thought out plan, as has been stated. I agree with everything that's been said for this plan. I think it's time to spend the money. Safety is not a good thing to put off. I think that's why it was important to vote for the fencing, and so this has been just on the back burner way too long, so I support it now too. Thank you.
Thanks, Alder Galvin.
And just, if, you know, you're reading through some of the data on this, they believe these could reduce the yield rates by vehicles up to 96%. And if you've ever tried to cross Monroe Street or Webster Avenue, like I have, and you have people that look at you as you literally stand in the middle of the street and zoom by you when you're standing in a crosswalk. Yet you see what happens down at the hospitals when they put on those flashing crosswalks, everyone instantly brakes. So we're looking at reducing crashes by up to 47%, which, if you ask the police officers, they'd be more than happy to work 47% less accidents. And the cost to our community, when you think about injuries and the amount of damage and things like that, again, I think this is well worth it. And you know, I can't say how the school referendum is going to go, but if it goes and we only end up spending $300,000, that's just over 1% of our total ARPA funds, which, you know, it's still $300,000, and we can do a lot with that. But I just think it's good for us to go forward with this regardless. Thank you.
Thanks, Alder. All right, the motion on the floor is to refer this item back to the next Finance Committee meeting. So with that, we can use the board.
Thank you. Alders, you may vote.
Refer back to the Finance Committee.
It failed 8-4.
Yeah, I think we should probably re-vote.
Yeah, you know what, actually, let me just do a roll. I don't know why it's doing that.
Yeah.
So, Mr. Galvin? Johnson?
Yes.
Mr. Weary?
Yes.
Mr. Stoyer?
No.
Grant? Yes.
No.
Morgan?
Yes.
Beck? Yes.
That fails 8-4.
Say, well, it was a little different that time. It's now 7-5.
Oh.
So, let me just see. I think it's that starting vote. I'll fix that.
There we have it, 7-5.
Thank you. Thank you.
Entertain another motion? Motion to approve made by Alder Galvin, seconded by Alder Stevens. Any discussion? Alder Burnett?
Yeah, given the vote of the council, I mean, even though I voted the other direction, I hear what you're saying. If as a body, 7-5, we made that vote and it went the different direction, I'm just gonna say I'll support this. I think it sends a message to the community then, although the financing, all that's figured out, I think it is in fact a organizational need that I think the public will appreciate. So I'll make them, I'll be voting yes. Thank you.
Thanks, Alder. Any other comments? Mayor? Alder Johnson?
Just a point of clarification again, if the school referendum passes, the additional 1.3 million, again, just comes back into, I guess, our pool to reallocate at some point?
Yeah, I mean, I think there are some practical questions. There's no way that we're gonna be able to spend $1.3 million on these items by the time the November referendum arrives, but, you know, I would defer to Alder Grenier on what the plan might be, or Mr. Hanson on what the plan might be to roll some of this stuff out.
Right, some of this work is gonna have to be contracted, and not all of it can be done before the end, by the time the weather sets in for the year. So it's a contract that's gonna continue on into, 2023. So we will start expending monies. Some of the money, we're gonna have to work with, Grant Administrator Susan House. Some of it will be, in essence, a reimbursement. It'll go back into the ARPA funds. Some of it, the ARPA funds simply won't be expended. The school district funds would be expended instead. So the ARPA money that would have been encumbered but not yet spent would then be unencumbered and available for other ARPA use projects, if that makes sense.
It does. And when would you anticipate having to make payments on some of this? When does that funding need to be accessible?
The first funding that needs to be accessible is we are going to be ordering materials. So the machine that's identified under Project One for making the pavement markings, that's a machine that we're going to be purchasing, and the paint that goes along with that. That would be among the first items to be expensed. The second thing that we're going to be doing is ordering the RRFB, all of the equipment, the physical signs, posts, things of that nature. The sheer volume of those exceeds the capacity of my staff to install, so we will purchase the materials and then look to a contractor to install them. So the purchase of those materials would be an earlier rather than later expense. What I don't know is if the contractor, if the sign suppliers and post suppliers, if we're gonna have to prepay for that or we pay for it upon receipt. But I would expect, depending on delivery deadlines, that would probably be something in the 8 to 12 week category.
Very quick, actually. I would expect within 2 months we should get at least the RFB equipment. That's what I'm
Okay,
familiar
so the RFBs we'd probably have within 2 months or so.
Okay. And the reason I'm asking, you know, it's just, part of me, again, just it wants to go through that process, and it's the contemplation of an amendment, you know, that would say, hey, we'll authorize 300,000 now, but refer the other 1.3. But it sounds to me like what you're saying is that you would need access to that funding prior to the referendum taking place.
I'm guessing we're going to need somewhere between 40 to 50% of that funding up front, just for material purchase.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Thank you, Alder. Any other comments? Alder Stoyer?
Your Honor. Director Grenier, I was going to ask if this project's going to go into 2023, right? 2 years, maybe, or? About 2 years.
Trail into 23, yes.
So if this passes, what kind of priorities are there for the intersections or schools that would be done initially? Is there anything?
The traffic engineer does have a list of the intersections in priority order.
Okay,
So we're just simply going to start at the
Just
top
start.
and attack things.
all right. I'll look at that.
Thanks, Alder. Other comments? Alder Brunette?
To Ms. Hummel, make sure you don't lose this letter. This is our promissory note. All right, thank you. And I do want to commend her, because I know she has really worked extremely hard on this and has been working. It's no small feat to get this level of commitment, at least in writing, from another government, so good job. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mayor, just one more thing.
Yeah, Alder Johnson.
Thank you. To that point, I just want to point out that this is kind of like the message to every member of city council to advocate for the referendum, because it brings 1.3 million back to the city, so wink, wink.
Very good point. All right, we have a motion and a second. All in favor will signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. That item is approved. On to item 9. Motion to approve made by Alder Scannell. Seconded by Alder Galvin. It was pulled by Alder Brunette.
Yeah, thank you. I support the motion to approve. I do, if Attorney Bunger did, well, she's here. I didn't know if she was at home, but I did see you earlier. I should know better. So obviously, we have discussed this at length over the years. The newer members know, based on our last meeting, what our intent was. It got heated at different times, but Attorney Bunger had worked on this draft. It seemed like she took it as an opportunity for her department to kind of rework and reward some other parts of the policy that needed to be updated. I would like her, respectfully, to kind of update shortly the process, but then also the funds for grants are one thing, but if you recall at the last meeting, my concern was, how do we limit using advisors? That was the other part of the equation. So, accepting grants as part of the policy, prohibiting that's one thing, soliciting, but can we be assured that the city, through the use of private funds or through our own city budget, perhaps, without the approval of the council, to limit advisors helping us with election administration? Can you kind of comment on that? I know I'm rambling a bit.
Sure. I think I think typically when grants are awarded to a city or any other entity, they come with advisors. Advisors wouldn't be provided to the city without there being a grant associated with it. So usually a grant is provided with some sort of contact from where the grant is being provided to ensure that the grant is being administered and utilized appropriately within the parameters of whatever the grant structure was. So if there is no grant, there wouldn't be an advisor. If the city wanted to hire an advisor, even if it's on a pro bono basis, that would separately come to most likely personnel or finance as a request to basically retain the services of another entity or another group or an individual, and so on. So essentially, if the policy is restricting that we can't receive, the city staff, city departments can't solicit for these types of grants, then there wouldn't be an advisor because there would be no grant. If that answers your question.
Yeah, sort of. Outside of this policy change, though, what guardrails or safeties do we have in place that, I'm just saying hypothetically, I don't know, I don't want to get into a big thing, but let's just say the clerk's office they didn't solicit this, but they approach an advisor, say a third-party advisor, to advise the city on how to administer an election. Like, what can we put in place to limit that? Like, should the council be advised? Should we be aware? Because at the last, and I'm not trying to litigate the past, but it came up late October. A lot of people were concerned with some of the advisors the city had been using in 2020. And I just want to avoid that surprise at that point.
Sure.
Does that make sense?
Ultimately, the administration of elections is completely within the power and authority of the clerk. And that is provided under state statute. So that can't be circumvented. Whatever resources the clerk utilizes, basically budgetarily funding focused, is all coming through the budget process that council approves. And she has certain duties and requirements that she has to exact under the statutes, and that's who's running the election. I'm not sure if there is a feasible way for council to prevent people from approaching the city. Obviously, any kind of unsolicited approach for any kind of assistance or ideas or thoughts or brainstorming or anything in that effect always would have to come to council to approve as to those services that are being offered to be given. So the guardrails are the fact that it would have to come to council. So council would be the ultimate body, the buck stops with the council.
Right.
So I think that exists just by the nature of how city government is structured.
So I want a drama-free election. I think we all do, for a lot of reasons. So that was why the refer back to staff to have Clerk Jeffries present to the council prior to the election. We can ask those questions. Have we taken any help? Will you take any help? Just to have a level of accountability. So I don't want to belabor this point. I think Attorney Bungert, there are some things I wish were kind of buttoned up a little differently, but I'll just kind of take her word for it that some of the guardrails that I intended through the communication are in fact put in place through this grant policy amendment. So I'm in support of the yes vote. Thank you.
Thanks, Alder. Any other comments on this item?
Yeah.
Alder Scannell, and then Alder Eck.
Just a quick, all this brouhaha about advisors and navigators and everything, let's remember, this all happened during a
Global
pandemic. And because of that, because of the advisors and navigators, people who didn't know what they were doing because of a pandemic, we ended up with a fair, safe election with greater turnout in both parties. So let's remember the conditions that all this happened under, and it's probably highly unlikely, hopefully, we're done with the pandemic. There are no other emergencies coming. We're not going to get hit with an asteroid or something. And this is all very mute and redundant, as I've been saying all along, because it's always been in our power, always been our authority. And I appreciate some alders didn't like some of the decisions made. That's tough. There's been times I didn't like the decisions made, and in closed session. I would have loved to have had those discussions out in open session, but it would have been irresponsible. And sometimes, no matter how much you disagree with your fellow alders, you just got to respect them. Thank you.
Thanks, Alder. Alder Eck.
Okay, so I want to just kind of understand. So it's in here as to refer to staff, including a report, the bullet point. Okay, didn't we already return it back to staff and we're waiting for that? I guess I'm not understanding why this is on the agenda right now the way it is, because it seems to me it was what we already voted on. Am I misunderstanding that? I'm not sure who to point the question to.
Attorney
I
Bungert?
can answer that.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, so initially it was, there was a communication, and referred to staff to amend the existing grant policy that we have in place to include the prohibition of the use of, outside private funds for, election administration, with caveat for, accepting, obviously leasing polling locations and paying poll workers and getting equipment. Staff did start working on the revisions to that policy, but when we did start working on it, we realized that with the structure of the current grant policy, we needed to create an entire different substructure or a subsection within the policy in order for the carve-out for prohibition of election funding or election grants to be put into it. So it was kind of trying to fit a square peg into a round hole, so we have to continue working on it, but we wanted to show the progress that staff had already made because we had made assurances that it was gonna come back to the next finance committee meeting. So we provided what is a redlined working draft, and then staff was just asking for additional time, to continue working on it, to continue the additional drafting that was necessary, and then that will come back to finance on the 21st. So that's why it's being referred back to staff for continued work.
Okay, thank you for the clarification.
You're welcome.
Tell the rec. One question, honestly, I should have asked when we were discussing the agenda with senior staff, but this is something that Alder Brunette brought up when we were talking yesterday. This sort of preamble to the motion, if you will, I was curious how that got grafted on to this motion.
That was me.
Okay.
Yes.
And I mean, I think just, Alder Brunette, like I said, and I were talking about this at our pre-meeting yesterday. This information is available already. The finance director provided it to the council as a whole and to Alder Brunette back in December of 2020, roughly.
And I'm trying to remember back that far, to
Also,
last week.
yeah.
But,
It's a year and a half ago.
What I was looking for was just a quick bullet point thing that, because of some of the stuff that we're looking at here, so that when it finally comes to us, that this information would be included to help me make a decision, what I want to support or don't support or get more clarification on. Because some of the concern was that the city was doing outreach for voter registration and information that, and I'm thinking to myself, well, if this is a nonpartisan election, some of it, and so, because comments have been made, we'll leave it up to the political parties to do it. But isn't that more of a government thing to help people know how to register to vote and how to vote properly? And so I was wondering exactly, who did we do outreach to? Did we just do a mass mailing to every address in the city, which to me would be pretty much we went to everybody? Or did we focus on certain groups and things like that? And so I'm just looking for information on that.
Okay,
That's all.
and just, I guess, thinking out loud here, I mean, would you want to work with the clerk to make sure it's all good?
Yeah.
So, okay,
I'll have something for the committee,
okay,
She yelled
that
at
I'll
me
give to
and
Diana.
said, "I'm sorry."
right, okay, very good. Apologies for that tangent. So we do have a motion and a second. Alder Weary?
Mr. Mayor. I think my button's lit. I wasn't gonna talk either, but what the hey. Let's not downplay the horrendous election blunders that happened. No matter what your excuse might be, there were very objectionable decisions made and actions taken. Period. That's a big reason why we have a new council seated right now. One that demands more transparency and election oversight. No apologies. Thank you.
All right, so we have a motion and a second. We do have a motion and a second, right?
Never mind, we'll let it go.
All in favor will signify by saying aye. Opposed, nay. The ayes have it, and that item is referred back onto the Park Committee. Motion to approve made by Alder Stevens, seconded by Alder Galvin. Any items here to be handled separately? Seeing none, all in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, nay. The ayes have it, and that report has been approved. Now we're on to the report of the Personnel Committee.
Motion to approve.
Motion to approve made by Alder Scannell and seconded by Alder Galvin. Just trying to talk slow for our clerk here. Computer's slow. All in favor will signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. That report has been approved. Public Arts.
Motion to approve. Oh, second.
Motion to approve made by Alder Stevens, seconded by Alder Scannell. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay.
It is, the system is so slow tonight, yeah.
And the ayes have it. And the Public Arts Commission report is approved. Traffic, Bicycle, and Pedestrian Commission. Motion to approve made by Alder Scannell and seconded by Alder Stevens. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. The ayes have it, and that report has been approved. Economic Development Authority.
Motion to approve.
Motion to approve made by Alder Scannell and seconded by Alder Galvin. Any discussion here? Seeing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. The ayes have it, and that report has also been approved. Receive and place on file.
Motion to receive and place on file.
Motion to receive and place on file that building report for May 2022 and the municipal court report for May 22, made by Alder Scannell and seconded by Alder Galvin. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. The ayes have it, and those have been approved.
Motion to suspend the rules.
Motion to suspend the rules and take up the resolutions with one roll call vote. That was made by Alder Scannell, seconded by Alder Stevens. All in favor will signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. The ayes have it, the rules are suspended.
Motion to approve.
Motion to approve made by Alder Scannell, seconded by Alder Eck, and we will use the board on these resolutions.
Thank you, you may vote.
You guys looking forward to the presentation at the end?
Mr. Campbell?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a unanimous vote to approve.
Yes.
On to petitions and communications. Any? Alder Weary?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I already submitted it, so you won't have to print it off. I did put two in, one to revisit the overnight parking ban, so that'll be going to improvement services. I know we all love talking about that. And then the second one is to look at a flagpole policy for the city of Green Bay. Thank you.
All right. Any others?
Adjourn?
Motion to refer?
I think you already submitted it, right?
Oh, so we don't have any motion to refer. Motion to adjourn made by Alder Johnson, seconded by Alder Eck. All in favor, signify by saying aye. Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. We're adjourned. Thanks, everyone.